Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 626 Beef Ramen. Huh? Are the Decepticons making a move too? Little Wu's alert naturally caught the attention of everyone around. Liang Yue was also straightforward, and with a flip of his sleeve, he took out a panoramic sand table. A few seconds later, a simulated panoramic model popped up on the sand table, covering a radius of up to 500 miles, that is to say, with the sand table in Liang Yue's hand as the center, all the scenery on the ground within a radius of 250 kilometers was being monitored in real time, and this was only relying on the sand table itself, without the aid of any external equipment or signal enhancement, including the AI, Little Wu. This was the result of Little Wu's continuous evolution of this technological product after spending 30 years in the DC world, after connecting the corresponding information. Sam's location was zoomed in on in the blink of an eye at first glance. It was a relatively bustling commercial district, not far from the school. Apart from the chaotic crowd around, Michaela was also with a young man at this time. The two of them were obviously shopping and browsing, and even while being chased, they were still carrying a new handbag and a bag of sneakers. Looking closely, they seemed to be a few combat personnel wearing military uniforms and plainclothes police uniforms. Obviously, these were some defensive forces that the New York police and military had deployed in advance in recent times. It was just a pity that, perhaps because the current street belonged to a city commercial district, some of the weapons and equipment deployed by these two forces were mostly light firepower to that Decepticon armored vehicle. It was almost like scratching an itch through a boot. Soon after sensing the attack, the armored vehicle suddenly rolled over, changed shape, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed from a black and white muscle armored vehicle into a humanoid combat robot 5 meters tall. With just a lift of its two thick mechanical arms, 4 rockets were launched. It directly blasted the 4 high-level firepower strongholds that were attacking it, as well as the rooftop sniper positions in the commercial street, into pieces. This situation immediately made the faces of everyone present extremely ugly, especially General Ross. The little old man's face was so gloomy at this time that it was almost dripping ink. I'll go take a look. Seeing this situation, Liang Yue naturally wouldn't stand idly by, even if it wasn't for those American soldiers and police officers. Just for the purpose of protecting his own classmates, he had to take action as soon as possible. After getting up from his seat, an orange halo suddenly appeared spinning in the void beside him, and Liang Yue then stepped into it under the gaze of everyone around. The next moment, he appeared in that commercial district filled with flames and bullets through the coverage of the panoramic sand table. Everyone at the round table stood up unconsciously at this moment, staring intently at Liang Yue, who suddenly appeared more than 10 meters behind that Decepticon. He just gently raised one arm. With his 4 fingers together in a hand knife shape with a wave, a white-hot blade nearly 20 meters long instantly appeared in front of his palm. The blade seemed to casually press down, directly cutting the Decepticon's head in half vertically, and the front end of the blade directly cut into its chest at the incision. There was even a stream of fiery lava-like liquid. The next moment, the blade disappeared without a trace, and the Decepticon's remains floated directly in front of Liang Yue. Sam, Michaela, come here, along with Liang Yue's shout. After a while, the 3 people and a corpse crossed the space gate and returned to Liang Yue's manor. In the process, apart from the time spent shouting and waiting for his 2 classmates, the time Liang Yue actually used to deal with that transformer was probably no more than a second. This kind of efficiency and lethality shocked everyone present, and they subconsciously moved their Adam's apples. Are you guys having a meeting? After landing, Sam took a deep breath, touched the sweat on his forehead, glanced at everyone, and then asked with a deliberately relaxed expression, well, Bumblebee's teammates are coming tonight. We're all waiting. Throwing the Decepticon aside, Liang Yue then patted the young man's shoulder and said, actually they've already arrived. Natasha next to her took over the conversation at this time, pointing to the ruins and wreckage that the Transformers had just smashed out when they landed in various parts of New York City. On the panoramic sand table in that virtual model, robots of different sizes almost immediately began to disguise themselves after landing. Avoiding the side of the surrounding crowd, they quickly simulated the shells of some passing vehicles, and eventually transformed into well-known car models. In addition, Probably due to the coordinates set by Bumblebee before, the Transformers' landing points were not far from Liang Yue's manor, of course, not too close either, probably in the northern part of New York City, near a slum area. Calculated by driving distance, it would take them at least half an hour to reach this manor. Okay, when you guys went out shopping just now, did you have dinner? After withdrawing his gaze from the sand table, Liang Yue then looked at the two classmates beside him and continued to ask, not yet, we were just about to find a restaurant to eat, but we didn't expect. Then come in with me, I'll get you something to eat. Saying that, Liang Yue gestured to the two of them, and then led them towards the gate of the villa. Who knew that just after taking 2 steps, Stark, who was a little flushed from drinking, suddenly reached out and gestured to him. Hey, I haven't had dinner yet either, prepare a portion for me too. After saying that, he shamelessly winked at him. I want a portion too. Liang Yue, keep it simple, after all, we have to meet the guests in a while. General Ross, who had been focusing on the panoramic sand table, said at this time without raising his head. Me too, don't put too much chili, thank you. Nick Fury on the other side also chimed in at this time. I'll have a sandwich, plus a bottle of beer, thank you. I'm easy, I don't have too many requirements for food. As long as it can fill my stomach, then I'll help make it together. What are you planning to use to entertain them? After arriving in the kitchen, Natasha, who came in to help, opened the refrigerator and looked at it on her own. After finding that there were only some snacks inside, she spread her hands and looked at Liang Yue helplessly. Beef ramen, I guess. Saying that, Liang Yue put a large pot on the fire and turned on the gas stove. That might take a lot of time, right? Sam scratched his scalp and said at this time, don't worry, the beef broth has always been on the fire. The noodles have been prepared long ago, and even the hot water is ready-made. After saying that, Liang Yue flipped his sleeve, and took out a bucket of steaming clear water and poured it into the pot. In just 10 seconds or so, the water started to boil again. After that, Liang Yue took out a large ball of noodles that had been pressed in advance with a windmill. He remembered that when he was kneading the dough, he had specially added alkaline water mixed with ash powder. Seeing this, Natasha's charming face was full of smiles, and she consciously took out a stack of sea bowls from the cupboard for serving noodles. Liang Yue then took a large wooden spoon, and with a flip of his hand, he brought a full spoonful of braised beef soup, which was mixed with 7 or 8 square pieces of beef with tendons. The whole process was as if he was serving food from the void. The scene was extremely magical, and Michaela next to him was stunned, but soon, she and Sam were attracted by the tempting aroma of the rich oily soup and meat. Subconsciously rubbing their bellies, they twitched their noses when Liang Yue put 4 cooked quail eggs in each bowl. Even Natasha next to him began to swallow saliva unconsciously. A few minutes later, the ramen was cooked, and after scooping it out, Liang Yue rinsed it in cold water on the water pipe, and then put it into the bowls one by one. The 3 people next to him skillfully carried the trays and quickly served the food, while Liang Yue carried a box of beer and walked at the end. Chapter 627 Attitude and Stance. Wuxia. Hey kid, why are you giving us this kind of beer? What about that homebrewed stuff of yours? Tony Stark slammed down the bowl of ramen, then sucked down a mouthful of beef broth. Before grabbing a napkin to wipe the sweat from his brow, heaving a sigh, he reached for the beer next to him, ready to take a hearty swig, only to discover it was store-bought bottled stuff. Immediately, he looked at Liang Yue with some dissatisfaction and asked, that stuff is too strong. Aren't you supposed to be meeting guests later? Liang Yue glanced at him upon hearing this and replied. After speaking, he casually took out several fruit platters filled with blueberries, strawberries, grapes, and lychees and placed them on the table. What kind of beer? Is it special? Simmons, the director of Sector 7, who had just finished his noodles and looked up from his bowl, also wore a satisfied expression and couldn't help but ask. After hearing this, Nick Fury explained from the side, it's a low-alcohol light magic ale, with certain nourishing effects. What's interesting is that taking a sip can put you in a slightly tipsy state. Stark didn't forget to add, but no matter how much you drink, you won't get drunk. Captain America Steve, upon hearing this, was immediately surprised. So magical. General Ross, having just wiped his mouth with a napkin, grabbed a few blueberries from the fruit platter in front of him, acting as if it were only natural, and said knowingly, looks like I'll have to come over and try it sometime. Liang Yue, after finishing the noodles, Sam, Michaela, and Natasha very consciously began to help clear the table just as they had finished cleaning up, before the people around the round table could even say a few words. A slightly noisy engine roar suddenly sounded in the distance. The sound went from far to near, cutting through the night sky, and soon passed through the gates of Liang Yue's manor, arriving at the small square in front. Of course, This was definitely because Liang Yue had secretly instructed the AI Xiao Wu to temporarily disable the gate restrictions. Otherwise, even this team of Transformers led by Optimus Prime would probably have difficulty entering and exiting safely under the defensive firepower of his home. Clank clank clank. Gurgle 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 buzz. Soon, accompanied by a burst of exciting mechanical transformation sounds, 4 Transformers appeared in front of everyone. Yes, only 4 if Liang Yue wasn't mistaken. The dozen or so Transformers that had landed together from outer space earlier should now be divided into at least 2 teams. In the self-introduction of this team in front of everyone, the 4 big guys were respectively, the leader of the Autobots Optimus Prime's second-in-command Jazz, Optimus Prime's weapons expert Ironhide, and Optimus Prime's medical expert Ratchet, plus Bumblebee, who had already landed on Earth for some time at this time. A total of these 5 appeared in front of everyone. Unfortunately, what they didn't know was that their meticulousness had already been revealed on the panoramic sand table that Liang Yue had previously taken out. Everyone present already understood the number of them descending to Earth this time. Regarding this point, Bumblebee should also inform Optimus Prime and others afterward. However, before eating, Liang Yue had already put away the panoramic sand table. The specific whereabouts of the other Autobot Transformers should not be easy for others to find. In this way, after the 2 sides conducted preliminary self-introductions and greetings, in the following time, they began to communicate about the purpose of the Transformers' visit to Earth. What was different from the development in the original plot was compared to the passionate youth, Sam, who was still a bit of a greenhorn. The group of sector directors, military generals, and independent department heads present at this time were obviously much more difficult to deal with. After understanding the intentions of Optimus Prime and others, the old guys joined forces to start a negotiation and tried their best to fight for the initiative. In order to obtain more benefits in the future during the process, Ross from the military was responsible for being tough, while Nick Fury mainly used roundabout tactics, and Simmons from Sector 7 occasionally played the role of comic relief. But soon, this goofy director was replaced by Tony Stark. Hey buddy, what do you think of this matter? Just as those old guys were busy bargaining with Optimus Prime and others, Sam turned his head at this time with a look of incomprehension and asked Liang Yue in a low voice. Obviously, this was the first time this young man had seen such an occasion where he represented Earth to negotiate with aliens. Shouldn't we be more cautious when dealing with aliens? Caution is necessary. But those people have a pirate mentality, subconsciously making predatory contact. But they don't even think about it. With their country's strength and wealth, aliens are fully capable of adopting the same attitude as them, taking the lead, and then forcing them to submit. This is actually a problem with the underlying thinking logic of a civilization and group. When they encounter a truly powerful race one day, they will be the sinners of Earth. Is the matter that serious? Barbarians also, fearing power but not cherishing virtue, having small etiquette but lacking great righteousness. What does that mean? By the way, when that day really comes, you shouldn't stand idly by, right? After all, we are all human. That's what I really hate about them. Right now, they are even calculating me in, and what they are using is my own moral pity and a little empathy. Oh, that's really bad. Buddy, watch, no matter what the outcome of the negotiation is, afterward they will still try their best to exclude me, not wanting me to touch even a bit of the benefits. So this kind of person is completely unsuitable as an object of interaction. Even if it's just business dealings, it will make people feel disgusted. Sigh. Regarding the almost unscrupulous whispers of these 2 in the back, Captain America Steve Rogers, who was sitting next to them, also heard the words in his ears. Obviously, this well-known World War II veteran in the world seemed to also have some empathy for this, but he was helpless. On the other side, a certain drug tycoon who had just retreated from the front line, filled his glass with wine from the bottle, preparing to go to the front line again, revealed a playful look. After hearing this, he gently patted Liang Yue on the shoulder, and then, with the posture of someone who had been there, left him with a comforting look. However, what Stark didn't know was that Liang Yue was standing at a higher level, expressing his views on this situation, which determined his attitude towards these people in the future rather than simply expressing his dissatisfaction. Chapter 628 Hoover Dam. Soon, in about 10 minutes or so, the negotiations between the 2 sides inevitably reached a stalemate. On one hand, Ross and the others were putting on an act, trying to squeeze profits from the Transformers through extreme exploitation. On the other hand, Optimus Prime and the others also had their own principles and persistence, and after the initial contact, they obviously wouldn't place too much trust in humans. Moreover, although Optimus Prime was turned into an imbecile in the movie plot, seemingly born with the attribute of a Cybertronian traitor, considering everything from the human perspective, but Liang Yue is now in reality Although this is still a Marvel world, after adding the word comprehensive, everything will change at least. In Liang Yue's observation, the Optimus Prime in front of him is quite normal. The glasses are here seeing that the negotiating parties were not giving way to each other, and the situation was about to collapse. Liang Yue felt that the time was almost right. With a flip of his sleeve, Sam's great-grandfather's small glasses suddenly appeared in his hand. Then, he directly tossed it to Optimus Prime on the opposite side. "Oh, thank you, human." Subconsciously using two thick steel fingers to carefully hold it in his hand, Optimus Prime then expressed his gratitude to him immediately afterwards. Regardless of Ross, Nick Fury, and the others' unsightly expressions, he released a beam of light from his eyes, hitting the lens of the glasses. The next moment, a virtual Earth model was reflected. That location isn't close to this city. "Guys, it seems to be on a river. If we leave now, it will take about 3 or 4 days by car. And that's if the road is clear. There seems to be a human building there. What is this? A power plant? And a man-made dam? That seems to be the Hoover Dam, a landmark building in our country." Sam saw the markings on the screen through the gap and added from the side, completely unaware of the ugly look on the face of Simmons, the director of Sector 7. But Michaela saw it and asked with some surprise, "What's wrong with you?" Who knew that this would be like lighting the fuse of a firecracker, causing this guy to explode? Directly turning his head, he unleashed a torrent of abuse at the little girl, even revealing Michaela's past criminal record and the fact that her father was in jail, causing everyone around to watch. Nick Fury even noticed some key information from Simmons' words. For example, the Hoover Dam is the core base of Sector 7. General Ross directly took out his mobile phone and made a call to the Secretary of Defense. In this regard, Liang Yue really wanted to remind this old man that their military's communication system had already been eavesdropped on by the Decepticons. Using this small mobile phone to make a call was equivalent to transmitting information to them. However, Liang Yue ultimately didn't do that. In short, the atmosphere at the scene was very chaotic for a while, and it gradually quieted down after a long time. At this time, General Ross, after finishing the phone call, seemed to have received some orders. He walked forward with a serious face, looked at Liang Yue, and then looked at the group of Transformers. "I just received a secret order from the Secretary of Defense. A Hercules transport plane is flying here. It will take you to a military base near Las Vegas. The runway in front of your Stark's construction site is now temporarily requisitioned." "No problem, General Ross, but can you tell me why? After all, you weren't so generous before." At this time, Stark was still holding a tall wine glass, with a hint of red on his face from the alcohol, seemingly a little tipsy. "Before, a military base of ours in the Middle East was attacked. Except for one combat squad, all the soldiers there were slaughtered. There's evidence that this was done by those damned Decepticons. In addition, they also tried to invade the military's communication network and tried to find information about something. Just now, Air Force One was also invaded by them and was forced to make an emergency landing. Those guys seem to be looking for information about a project called Iceman." Speaking of this, Ross subconsciously adjusted his glasses, and then looked at Simmons on the side. "Iceman project? Has the information been leaked?" Simmons' eyes widened upon hearing this, and he calmed down from his original crazy state, and asked, "I don't know, but according to the information we have now, since they can find Sam, it proves that they have been lurking on our internet for a while. We must be prepared for the worst." Obviously, he shouldn't have thought before that. Just a few minutes ago, they were still comrades in arms working together to bargain with aliens, but now the object of coercion has turned into himself. In addition, the Secretary of Defense also plans to go to the Hoover Dam in person, and may have already boarded the plane. Seeing that this guy was still unwilling to let go, General Ross added fuel to the fire again. Simmons let out a low howl in his throat upon hearing this, but he pursed his lips tightly. Then, he took a deep breath, and the expression on his face turned into helplessness. "Okay, then let's hurry up. We'll talk about the Iceman project on the way." After speaking, this guy walked quickly towards his car with a black face. Seeing this, Nick Fury couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth, while Ross turned his gaze to Liang Yue. "Here again then," the old man said. "Although I know you don't like me very much, I hope you can help with this matter too, kid. Well, it's about the safety of the Earth, and the future of mankind." Liang Yue remained non-committal upon hearing this, but the look in his eyes seemed a little indifferent. Then, "Let's go." Stark on the side seemed a little excited at this time. After having his fill of food and drink, he seemed to want to have a post-meal exercise. As he spoke, the big dog owner subconsciously rubbed his hands, took out a long strip-shaped signal transmitter from his pocket, and started to remotely summon his combat armor with a light press cough. "Can I help?" Seeing that everyone else was ready to go and was about to rush to the battlefield, The passionate young man Sam also looked eager to try it this time, and approached Liang Yue Michaela behind him. Although she seemed a little inferior after Simmons revealed her background, she still followed you too. Just help us with the intelligence. As he spoke, Liang Yue flipped his sleeve, took out the previous panoramic sand table from his storage backpack. While turning it on, he looked at Stark next to him. I need your satellite support, Tony. No problem. I authorize you to temporarily connect the signal to the Stark Group's satellite service system, but only for this operation. Stark raised the signal transmitter in his hand high at this time, coupled with the flashing red light. He looked like a greasy middle-aged man about to transform. After hearing Liang Yue's request, he agreed almost without thinking. By the way, didn't I give you some satellite technology before? With Xiao Wu's research and development speed, designing an ordinary satellite shouldn't be a problem, right? It has already been manufactured. After this matter is over, I will throw them into the sky. That's more like it. Chapter 629 Gay Purple. A moment later, General Ross, accompanied by Nick Fury and others, led the 5 Transformers out of the manor in a hurry. The scene was left with only Liang Yue, Sam, Michaela, and Stark. Through the overhead view of the panoramic sand table, it could be seen that the Dog Tycoon's remote-controlled armor was already nearly halfway through its flight in the sky, and it was estimated to arrive at the scene in another 2 minutes through the Stark Group's satellite system. The intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, had also extended the coverage of the sand table to the Hoover Dam near Las Vegas. At this time, the dam management system had obviously received instructions from certain higher-level departments, and teams of staff in special security uniforms were quickly evacuating pedestrians and tourists around the dam in the dark. Some disguised buildings that were identified as armed equipment and defense facilities had also entered a state of combat readiness. Obviously, as a key department that was very likely to lead 1 or 2 technological revolutions in human society, Sector 7 could not possibly be like a movie plot, merely garrisoning a group of guard personnel who could not even guarantee the supply of light weapons in secret. Various defense measures were bound to be far superior to what was seen on the surface. This panoramic sand table of yours seems to have been updated again. At this time, Tony Stark, while holding a signal baton, leaned over sideways, widened his eyes and looked at the sand table layout on the round table. As a technology expert of a generation, and a pioneer in related scientific research fields, he could clearly see some differences after just a few glances. That's right, Xiao Wu recently made a relatively large adjustment and update to this sand table, not only in terms of coverage, but also in the design of some functions, which are more user-friendly. Liang Yue responded non-committally upon hearing this. The experience of a full 30 years in the DC world has not only improved him and senior sister Siko and other cultivators, but also the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, has naturally made rapid progress in technology research and development, and various branch derivations. The panoramic sand table in front of him is just one of them. Let me see. The current sand table seems to have added communication function. It can even be connected to the internet? Plus these external device sockets. Hey Liang Yue, don't tell me you plan to make it into a mobile phone. Stark looked at the sand table in front of him with shining eyes, and then asked Liang Yue with a look of surprise. Actually, this thing is much more advanced than a mobile phone. Compared to a mobile phone, I would rather see it as a portable computer, and it's the future military-enhanced version, that's for sure. Ordinary personal computers cannot have this kind of comprehensive early warning function. What is its coverage now? It has now been upgraded to 250 kilometers. Do you need Xiao Wu or a supercomputer to assist? It's not needed anymore. You mean, such a small metal disk can complete those functions by itself? Yes. What is the structure inside? Or to be more specific, is its integrated circuit material still using silicon? It has long been replaced with graphene, multi-layer 3-dimensional structure. Okay, it seems that your update this time has a lot of content. Hiss when this matter is over. I have to come over and have a good exchange with Xiao Wu. After saying that, Stark licked his lips at this time, and reluctantly raised his body from the sand table because at this moment, a sound of piercing through the air had already come from the distant sky. Everyone subconsciously turned their heads to look, and it was Stark's remote-controlled armor that was a new type of armor, mainly in black and purple color matching. At this time, looking from a distance, the black parts on the armor seemed to be embedded on the purple main armor in the form of pendant combinations, so at this time, this armor also appeared particularly thick. A thick and long electromagnetic cannon barrel was directly extended from the waist to the shoulder. After landing, Liang Yue's small square suddenly made a dong sound, sending out a slight tremor. Then I'm leaving, see you later. After speaking, Without waiting for Liang Yue to reply, Stark walked into the cabin of the armor on his own, and then, under the gaze of the three people here, flew towards the direction of his construction site. Afterwards, Liang Yue began to introduce the usage method of the panoramic sand table to Sam and Michaela next to him. About 10 minutes later, on a flat road that had been specially widened next to his manor, a Hercules transport plane slowly took off. After turning a circle in the air, it calmly turned and flew quickly towards the southwest. Frankly speaking, I think my and Michaela's current work is a bit redundant, buddy. If you really need intelligence, you can completely let Xiao Wu complete the collection work for you after being able to skillfully master the operation of the sand table in front of him. Sam looked at him with a slightly hesitant expression. At this time Michaela next to him had obviously realized this problem, but she just didn't ask. You can treat these things now as a test. In fact, from a long time ago, I have felt that the people around me are a little insufficient, so I had the idea of forming a team. You, Michaela, Peter, Gwen, and Nazi are all within my scope of investigation. Liang Yue smiled slightly upon hearing this, and said as if he had been prepared for a long time. In fact, Sam and Michaela at this time do seem a bit redundant for the current situation in the original plot. These two young men and girlfriends, relying on that reckless and impulsive energy, all the way between the Autobots and Decepticons, and the American military, rampaged and jumped around. The reason why he wasn't killed on the spot was, in addition to Bumblebee, Optimus Prime, and the protection of the U.S. military's special forces, more was still relying on the needs of the plot, or rather, it comes from the blessing of the protagonist's halo acting rashly. Without strength and discretion, completely relying on a rush. Therefore, when his plot part ended, this young man immediately received a lunchbox and directly turned into a photo in the fifth part. However, Liang Yue still needs to take special care of his classmate. After all, in addition to recklessness and passion, Sam also has some other good qualities, such as sincerity, courage, and trustworthiness, and this is exactly what Liang Yue values. Of course, judging from the performance in the previous plot, Michaela is also a reliable girl team. Are you serious? After listening to Liang Yue's words, Sam and Michaela's faces, which were originally a little lost, were immediately shocked. Of course. You should also be clear about my family's recent situation. This is the military, and its shield, and now those transformers are coming to the door, so busy. But currently in this family, basically I and the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, are supporting it. There are indeed a lack of people around me, and I also have a feeling that more and more things will happen around me in the future. Preparing in advance and recruiting some trustworthy people is almost my inevitable choice. But I heard before that there used to be a group of young girls in your family, assistants. They are all busy with their own affairs now. To be precise, they are working hard to improve their strength in a special place, and they don't have time to come back and help me for the time being. Improved strength? Are you saying, like you, to practice cultivation? Almost. My point is, after joining your team, can Michaela, Peter, and I also learn to cultivate? Yes, okay, I won't let you down, buddy. I will treat this intelligence mission as the most important thing in my life. Just wait and see. Me too. Chapter 630 Megatron. The night was hazy. After about 2 hours, the Globomaster transport plane carrying the military, SHIELD, Sector 7, and a group of Transformers combat personnel finally landed at a nearby military base. Subsequently, the group of people who had just landed didn't even have time to rest before forming a convoy and rushing towards the Hoover Dam. Perhaps it was because of fate. Just as their group had just approached the dam base, a group of special fighter jets suddenly roared in from the distant horizon. From afar, they launched attacks on the facilities surrounding the dam. The dark night seemed unable to obstruct their vision, as the rockets accurately hit the defensive positions originally hidden and built on the surrounding mountains. In particular, a power plant located in a nearby valley was directly targeted by more than a dozen missiles. Amidst the sparks of fire, it turned into ruins in the blink of an eye. Afterward, this group of fighter jets suddenly changed direction, making a half-circle in the air with a trajectory that did not conform to the principles of dynamics, and finally hovered there and began to carry out a covering strike against the defensive personnel below. Among them, a fighter jet suspected to be an F-22 transformed into a robot with wings on its back, but with a slightly wretched appearance. During a roll Starscream, among them, Optimus Prime, as the leader of the team, after shooting down a hovering fighter jet, directly shook his hands, holding a high-speed iron blade in one hand and a large axe in the other, and rushed forward against the ammunition and stray bullets. It seemed that he wanted to have a head-on duel with Starscream after his transformation. Unfortunately, The opponent's fighting style was too slick. He didn't seem to intend to confront Optimus Prime head-on at all. After a small jump into the air, he transformed into a fighter jet again and flew to another mountaintop. From there, he remotely directed the Decepticons to carry out long-range containment of the Transformers below. At the same time, a battle seemed to be taking place inside the dam base. Liang Yue noticed that Bumblebee, who is relatively small, had quietly entered the base at this time. Presumably, he should be participating in the battle for the Allspark. In addition, Stark seemed to be busy inside the base at this time. With his personality, he would probably be rushing to the front line to fight with these Decepticons outside. Captain America and Natasha, and others, were also not there now. It seems that the inside of the dam is indeed very uneasy, and it is suspected that it has been infiltrated. It's just that, this time, without the direct intervention of Sam and Michaela, I don't know what the situation inside will be. Alright, let me go and take a look. After making up his mind, Liang Yue moved his mind, and an orange aperture channel suddenly appeared beside him. After signaling Sam and Michaela, he stepped into it. The next moment, taking advantage of the cover of the night, Liang Yue quietly floated in midair below. A team of Decepticon flying combat units was actually hovering there in an orderly manner, venting firepower on the ground guards and dam facilities. However, perhaps due to lack of combat experience, this group of Decepticons clearly had an overwhelming advantage in terms of firepower at this time, but they were almost unproductive when facing the Autobots below. Only Ironhide, Optimus Prime's weapons specialist, was accidentally shot in the shoulder due to his too sturdy fighting style. On the contrary, almost every 10 seconds, a fighter jet would be shot down on their side. However, Starscream, as the commander of the Decepticons this time, was not moved by it at all, and had been using long-range firepower to contain Optimus Prime and others. Their current combat goal was very clear, which was to hold back the few Autobots below, and then wait for Megatron to break free on his own. Typical of doing the job without putting in the effort. However, this is also very much in line with the setting in the plot. Although the Decepticons are a villainous force, their interior is not monolithic. Moreover, among all the Transformers on Earth at this time, the Autobots only have a few, while the Decepticons are swarms and swarms, countless. There's even a special Decepticon breeding base on Mars. The power of the two sides is inherently unequal. The Autobots can be piled to death by numbers alone. If the Fallen on Mars wasn't too afraid of death, he could have just pushed them over in one wave. At that time, it's hard to say what would happen to Earth and humans, but Optimus Prime and the others would definitely be finished. Swish! Just as he was thinking wildly in his heart, a strange sound of shuttle suddenly came from below, successfully attracting Liang Yue's attention. To be precise, the source of the sound should be the tunnel leading to the inside of the dam, which was guarded by the Autobots. Obviously, Liang Yue was not the only one who noticed this movement. Several nearby Transformers, such as Jazz and Ratchet, also looked back subconsciously at this time, but the next moment, each of them was knocked out by a strong force, and even Optimus Prime was caught off guard and staggered in the dark night. Only a gray shadow rose into the sky flying out of the tunnel, drawing a powerful arc in the air with a burst of crackling transformation sounds. A Decepticon gleaming with metallic color heavily landed on the stone mountain on the other side of the dam. In his hand, he also grabbed a silver-gray Autobot, who was none other than Optimus Prime's second-in-command, Jazz, who had been knocked out earlier. Oh my master! The majestic figure of the great Megatron is truly amazing. Starscream flew behind this Decepticon at this time, bent over, supported the mountain stone on the side, and flattered very secretly. Whereas the Allspark, Starscream, Megatron did not look back when he heard the words, but continued to examine the surrounding situation, and finally focused his gaze on Optimus Prime on the opposite side. If I guessed correctly, the Allspark should still be in the cave where you were before. Go and take it back, but, Optimus Prime, leave him to me. After speaking, Megatron's face suddenly made a sound of metal clashing, and a hideous expression emerged. Then, he saw his hands exert force, pretending to tear Jazz in his hand to pieces. Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound suddenly came from the tunnel on the opposite side. Immediately afterward, accompanied by a flashing streamer, a flash of fire suddenly appeared on Megatron's cold iron body. In a burst of metal clashing sounds, he was immediately knocked back. Even Jazz in his hand fell to the ground. Unfortunately, in the previous collision, Jazz seemed to have been injured in the spine of his body as a result, even if he tried his best to crawl with both hands at this time. Moving seemed very difficult, and he was unable to escape in time. Bang! Bang bang! Bang! Afterward, several streamers shot in succession. Unfortunately, this time Megatron and Starscream seemed to have been prepared for a long time. One rolled and dodged, and the other simply shrank behind the mountain stone. The next moment, Under the interaction of darkness and light, a steel figure suddenly flew out of the tunnel and stopped in front of the entrance. Compared with the surrounding transformers, this figure seemed very small, but no one dared to underestimate him. Chapter 631 Leadership. Needless to say, this person was none other than Tony Stark, as someone who had been personally certified by a big shot from the universe's family planning department as being cursed with knowledge. Even when facing the Transformers, his set of design concepts and scientific research level were equally impressive. This was determined by the underlying logic of a world. However, perhaps because he was a bit too contemptuous of the enemy, after emerging from the base and giving Megatron a display of power, Stark actually just stopped in mid-air. He probably wanted to show off, observe the enemy's situation, and maybe even act cool. As a result, he was immediately subjected to concentrated fire from the Decepticons originally hovering in the sky. Only a little lower than Liang Yue's position, the Decepticons, who were exchanging fire with Optimus Prime, Ironhide, and others, immediately shifted their attack target. Whoosh 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 buzz bang. 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 After a round of attacks, the Dog Tycoon was directly beaten into submission, clanging and bumping, and directly smashed from the high dam into the riverbed. Fortunately, Stark's iridium armor was strong enough, coupled with the anti-shock system, which could be called heaven-defying. In the end, apart from a little dust on the outer layer of the Iron Man armor, there was almost no damage. Hey kid, are you just going to keep watching from up there? After climbing out of the cement rubble, Stark finally learned to be smart, controlling the armor to fly around in the sky, while all the attacks were handed over to the built-in Jarvis. In the process, this guy seemed to have discovered Liang Yue, who had been hidden in the darkness. Through the scanning system, the military and S.H.I.E.L.D. should have more than just this much ability, right? While answering Stark, who was complaining about being chased around like a rat, Liang Yue directly flashed to the hilltop where Megatron and Starscream were. However, whether it was S.H.I.E.L.D., the military, Sector 7, or the American government behind them, they obviously didn't have this qualification. They must have used some means to block our communication signals. By the way, aren't you going to help? After successfully taking out two Decepticons chasing him with the rapid fire of the electromagnetic cannon, Stark finally had time to catch his breath. Then, looking at Liang Yue, who was still planning to slack off, he said with some dissatisfaction in his tone, "Xiao, help solve the communication problem. Sam, Michaela, the rest is up to you." After saying that, Liang Yue disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. "Hello, Mr. Stark, and Optimus Prime, Ironhide, Ratchet, Jazz. According to my observation, there is a very strange combat team heading towards you along the highway. Estimated they will arrive at the scene in less than 3 minutes through the connection of the intelligent Xiao." Sam's voice quickly connected to Stark and the others' communication system. This young man was obviously a little nervous when he first started sharing intelligence, so much so that his voice was trembling slightly. "Explain clearly, kid, what kind of team is it? Are they Decepticon reinforcements?" Hearing this, Stark frowned and asked, "I guess so. There are military armored vehicles, civilian helicopters, armed helicopters, police cars, engineering vehicles, bulldozers, and tanks in the team. In short, it looks very strange, not like our reinforcements. By the way, Xiao has now restored all the communication in this area. I think you can also try to call for some support at this time." It was Michaela who was speaking. This girl was obviously more reliable than Sam. Although she was also a little nervous, she didn't forget to share the intelligence map while talking. It's just that due to the amount of calculation and some functional reasons, the map displayed on Stark's side was static, while the Transformers could only hear the sound. "Okay, it seems like we're in trouble now. Can you provide any support from your side, such as remote missiles, laser emitters, ultra-long-range coverage strikes, and things like that?" Seeing the menacing team on the picture, Stark suddenly calmed down a lot, and then asked about this. "Sorry, Mr. Stark. According to the information given by Xiao, Liang Yue doesn't seem to have obtained permission and authority to use any hot weapons beyond the limit for strike support, except within his own manor." "Okay, wait, it seems that another batch of flying units is approaching. There are 13 of them in total. Looking at the models, they are a bit like the Decepticons above your heads." "Yes, that's right. Their shells are also printed with the Decepticon logo, just in the northeast direction of the dam. It is estimated that they will arrive at the scene in 4 minutes. What? There are reinforcements over there too? How many of their clansmen have secretly infiltrated the Earth? So, if you want to call for support, please do so as soon as possible, Mr. Starkire. FECK. Thank you, buddy. So what do you think about this? Optimus Prime, while flying, he also had to divert his attention to conduct communication and intelligence analysis. For a time, Stark was obviously a little distracted before he could pay attention. Starscream in the distance seized the opportunity and swept down from the air with a 6-barreled Gatling gun. Fortunately, the Big Pillar and others on his side rescued him in time, pulling him back from the torrent of ammunition with a shield. I believe that your human support will not be able to reach here in time. Before the situation gets worse, we should divide into 2 groups, one responsible for containing the Decepticons, the other must take the Allspark away from here. If the Allspark is obtained by the Decepticons, they can mass-produce new Decepticons on this planet, and then the Earth will usher in doomsday. However, Bumblebee has been in there long enough. He was unable to bring the Allspark out, and should have been blocked by you. Optimus Prime is indeed the leader of the Autobots. His voice is magnetic, and the words he speaks are very trustworthy. You're right, buddy. After listening to the other party's plan, Stark thought about it carefully and felt that it was indeed correct, so he quickly hid behind the bridge pier, and the intelligent Jarvis continued to use the electromagnetic cannon to fight back, while he himself called Nick Fury. As a result, all he received was a rustling radio wave. What's going on, Jarvis? Did Liang Yue restore the communication? It's the short circuit caused by the previous strike, sir. Although your armor shell is strong enough, the communication system was affected by the explosion. Huff. Okay. Connect the communication to Nick Fury and Ross Sam. Hearing this, Stark exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and then could only helplessly put his hands in front of his helmet in a trumpet shape, and loudly called for Sam's support. The communication is already connected and is waiting for a response, Mr. Stark. Chapter 632 Fire Source. Obviously, compared to the crisis at hand, Ross, Nick Fury, Simmons, and the others were more concerned about the ability to mass-produce Transformers brought about by the Allspark compared to the plot shown in the movies. They seemed more humane at this time. There wasn't much trust between humans and Transformers. After all, they were different races, and their contact time was very limited. In addition, the Allspark was indeed too important. Once handed over, whether to the Decepticons or the Autobots, it would not be a good thing for Earth, actively or passively. When the number of either faction reached a certain level, it would inevitably threaten the development of mankind. This was obviously not the situation everyone wanted to see. Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that the military, SHIELD, and other forces had other motives in this world. People are all self-important. You, Sector 7, have held the Allspark, such a magical artifact, for hundreds of years, and have gained almost nothing except for being able to create some crazy, brainless Decepticon small fries. But just because you can't do it, doesn't mean we can't. It was with this kind of thinking that Ross, Nick Fury, Simmons, including the Secretary of Defense who had arrived earlier, were still arguing in the dam's base. Everyone wanted to take the Allspark for themselves, because they were all conceded that only by mastering this great weapon in their own hands could they guarantee the safety of Earth and mankind. Of course, this probably also included Liang Yue, because at this time, he was also very curious about this magical object that could, to a certain extent, create, or rather, transform various electrical appliances, vehicles, and other objects into mechanical creatures. The situation in the original plot, where chaos erupted inside and outside the dam, and everyone handed the Allspark over to Sam to take away directly, did not happen. Bumblebee was currently being blocked outside by a group of Sector 7's own guards with guns. And further inside were the special operations teams who had flown over with the Secretary of Defense. Among them were Captain America with his shield, Natasha with her 2 lady pistols, and Hawkeye, who was drawing his bow. Simply put, the further in, the more elite the people were. Unfortunately, these elites, who didn't take the usual path, were too strange in their approach, and their strength hadn't reached a certain level, generally leaning towards skill-based combat. Therefore, when facing Transformers with heavy firepower, the role they could play was probably not as good as a small soldier with a machine gun. When Liang Yue used the convenience of his special phasing ability to enter the interior of the dam base, what he saw was such a scene. It wasn't until Stark called Ross, Nick Fury, and the Secretary of Defense that the situation changed slightly due to the seriousness of the external situation. Then, Ross almost immediately asked Liang Yue if he had taken action. Stark told the little old man that he had helped restore communications. He also urged them to quickly summon reinforcements, then give up their illusions and prepare to break through with the Allspark, accompanied by the roar of artillery fire coming from outside the thick mountain and the rustling of falling dust. On the other hand, Nick Fury seemed very calm at this time, his dark face full of unfathomable mystery. Seemingly unintentionally, after exchanging a glance with Natasha next to him, The female agent turned her gaze to Steve Rogers on the other side then. The woman asked for his opinion. To be honest, Captain America's tactical literacy and combat ability were not low, and his IQ and EQ were both online, but he had only recently awakened from a hibernation of half a century, and he was probably still in a transitional period, not yet adapted to this transformation from a World War II veteran to a super agent. Therefore, after receiving Natasha's implicit encouragement and hints, the captain immediately took the bait without thinking. He directly started a thorough analysis from a tactical and combat perspective, and then came to a conclusion similar to Stark's and Optimus Prime's plan. They couldn't hold their ground, and they had to divide their forces and break through as soon as possible. Obviously, in terms of personal prestige, Captain America had a lot of say, although he himself didn't hold any prominent official position. Due to the Americans' unremitting publicity and momentum over the past half-century, they had already added many halo effects to this World War II veteran who had unexpectedly not died as a result. As soon as he spoke, the surrounding soldiers and guards subconsciously expressed their approval then, as if they had found a backbone. They gathered towards him one after another. Some American soldiers who were a little more emotional even directly expressed their support at this time one after another. Cheers went from sparse to continuous, and the crowd was in an uproar for some reason. The scene finally began to become high-spirited, and the surrounding soldiers began to cheer and express that they would follow the captain in response. Ross, the Secretary of Defense, Simmons, and the others on the other side seemed to have not yet reacted. How come the leaders hadn't even discussed a conclusion? And before they knew it, the right to speak had run into the hands of those soldiers. Mutiny. They seemed to be rebelling. In short, under this popular support and excitement, rashly jumping out to sing a different tune was obviously a very unwise behavior. Now, there were strong enemies invading from the outside, but the inside was still hesitant and unable to come up with an idea in this situation. The most urgent need was naturally for someone who could convince the public to stand up, quickly cut through the mess, and establish a clear goal for the next action. Captain America's actions at this time happened to meet this need, and he naturally became the leader, and Ross, Simmons, the Secretary of Defense, and others representing the original officer class were marginalized to the side, and could only temporarily stay on the periphery of the excited masses, with wooden faces. Watching the development of the situation, Liang Yue, who was secretly lurking on the side, also appeared beside the little old man Ross with a happy face, hugging his arms, and showing himself like this. "How is the situation outside now?" Ross glanced at him, grunted, and then asked indifferently, "You are about to be surrounded." As he said that, the little Wu Avatar bracelet on Liang Yue's wrist suddenly popped out a panoramic sand table, presenting the scene within a radius of 50 miles around the dam base in front of him. As the resolution of the sand table was further magnified, the fierce battle situation outside the base tunnel was also immediately revealed. It could be seen that at this time, only half a minute had passed, and the outer dam, tunnel, and mountain had become pitted under the attack of artillery fire. The dam cement pillars and stone piers that Optimus Prime and others relied on had now become dilapidated. Stark was being chased all over the sky by 4 Decepticon aircraft, but he also successfully attracted some firepower, and from time to time, aircraft would be hit by the counterattack of the electromagnetic cannon behind him. However, these combat units from mechanical civilization also had their own set of compensation schemes. After a few clicks, they patched up the hole, and then continued to relentlessly pursue Stark's figure. In addition, in the outer area around the dam, there were at least 2 other batches of combat forces coming, mighty and mighty, numbering 20 or 30. The situation is indeed not optimistic. Looking at the battle situation outside, Ross subconsciously adjusted his glasses and said, "Has communication been restored? I will call for support now." The Secretary of Defense simply took out his small mobile phone and called the nearby military base on the other side. With Steve's intervention, Bumblebee was finally let in. At this time, Bumblebee was walking towards the cubicle Spark, which was at least dozens of meters in size, under the attention of the surrounding people. Just by reaching out his hands and touching the surface a few times, the cube began to shrink little by little in a regular manner. In just 10 seconds, it had shrunk from its original side length of about dozens of meters to only about 30 centimeters, and it wouldn't even be too heavy to hold in one's hand. The surrounding people were amazed, and Liang Yue looked thoughtful about this. That seems to be another way of using space technology. Chapter 633, Racial Limitations of Transformers. Finally, after a unanimous decision by Captain America and the others, the Allspark was handed over to Bumblebee, who, along with Captain America, Natasha, and Hawkeye, formed a team to carry out this breakout mission. Throughout the entire process, the Secretary of Defense, Simmons, Ross, and Nick Fury stood by and watched, without expressing any opinions on the action. However, behind the scenes, they were constantly making phone calls to the outside world, issuing various action codes and troop deployment orders one after another. It seemed they were planning to reorganize their forces during the transfer of the Allspark and launch a major operation outside Liang Yue, who was once regarded as a powerful foreign aid and an exploitable asset in the eyes of Ross and others, was now being ignored. Apart from occasionally being used as a human-shaped map and information communicator, he was no longer expected to do anything imperceptibly. Under the influence of various parties, the development of the plot returned to its original track once again soon. After shrinking the Allspark, in just over 10 seconds, Bumblebee transformed back into car mode, carrying the SHIELD trio, and sped towards the outside of the base amidst the cheers and shouts of the surrounding soldiers. A moment later, accompanied by the roar of an engine, the three-person, one-car breakout team rushed out of the tunnel enveloped in smoke and fire in the darkness, like a dark yellow whirlwind. Traveling at a speed of at least 300 miles per hour, they sped along the bumpy dam. Optimus Prime and the others also seemed to have been prepared in advance, clearing the obstacles on the road ahead of time, and then transforming into car mode, closely following Bumblebee, speeding along the road. While speeding along, they also did not forget to extend gun barrels and machine gun launchers from the roof and sides of the vehicles, retaliating against the enemies from the sky at the same time, relying on superb driving skills and occasional transformations, leaps, and barrel rolls. They continued to move forward quickly under a barrage of ammunition. Stark was not idle either. After diverting the Decepticons' attention to Bumblebee, he temporarily hid in the shadows of a rocky mountain. After Megatron, Starscream, and their combat units roared away, he revved up his engines again and stealthily followed behind. In a flash, Liang Yue arrived at the front of the tunnel. Before him was a scene of devastation surrounded by various rubble and broken concrete, and under the cover of darkness, a figure was quietly lying among them. It was Jazz, whose spinal column had been torn apart by Megatron earlier. At this moment, his companions were busy fighting the Decepticons. With the fate of their race and the destiny of humanity at stake, Jazz, the injured and immobile soldier, was naturally left behind temporarily. Ugetsu, human. Thank you for saving me earlier, but my injuries are a bit serious right now. If you're talking about helping, can you help me repair the bearings and the drive shaft on my body? I don't know if there are any replacement parts in the base behind us. Somewhat weakly pushing aside the rubble in front of him, Jazz looked at Liang Yue with a wry smile in his voice. This not difficult. After saying that, Liang Yue raised his left fist towards him, and a verdant green light suddenly shone, enveloping Jazz completely in just a few breaths. The originally dilapidated Autobot suddenly became brand new. Not only was the exterior repaired, but even the internal body structure, various components, and a considerable number of details were strengthened and updated to a certain extent under the effect of the green light. This change immediately made Jazz widen his eyes, and he jumped up from the rubble in an instant, spinning, handstand, somersault, side flip. A series of fancy moves flowed smoothly, and the flexibility was amazing. Moreover, compared to the original juggling-like movements, the current Jazz also possessed a considerable sense of power. Wow! How did you do that? I feel like my body has been strengthened all over. It's like I've been reborn. This is something even Ratchet can't do. Feeling the seemingly endless power and lubrication in his body, Jazz seemed extremely excited at this moment, gesticulating and experimenting with his new form. I used a special power to reconstruct your body, not only repairing the damage but also strengthening most of the parts. Liang Yue spread his hands and simply explained his working philosophy to the other party. As for the specific principles and structure involved, he naturally wouldn't tell the other party that it was through the construction and forging of the Green Lantern ring, nor would he tell the other party that it was the optimization designed from the intelligent brain, Xiao Wu, and the supply and conversion of energy from the Earth's star core. Also, since the Earth in this dimension is very likely a product formed with the Transformers' progenitor, the Universe Emperor, as its core, the energy attributes therein are inherently compatible with Transformers. In short, after leaving the DC world, the Green Lantern ring can still be used. However, due to the different planetary environment, the energy it uses for conversion has also changed. As the basic consumption of energy has changed, the natural consequence is a series of causal relationships, and the resulting effects will also be different. Fortunately, Liang Yue usually only uses the Green Lantern ring as an auxiliary tool, occasionally using it to do experiments and produce some elixirs, and has not used it as his primary means of combat, so it doesn't affect him much. Thank you, buddy. But there's no time to say extra words now. I have to go help Optimus Prime and the others. I'll come to your door separately to express my gratitude later." After saying that, Jazz saluted Liang Yue, and then transformed into a car, and with a humbly sped away. Judging from the other party's current startup and acceleration, there was indeed a considerable degree of improvement compared to the previous car body. In fact, considering the entire Transformers plot, at least from the depiction in the movies, neither the Decepticons nor the Autobots themselves possessed very high levels of technology, or rather, the entire Transformers race's evolution and technological development are mainly focused on the field of engineering machinery compared to the Earth humans, who have a nearly comprehensive development in fields such as biology, physics, chemistry, artificial intelligence, and even the mystical side. It is undoubtedly somewhat lacking in stamina. It belongs to a serious imbalance, with many inherent shortcomings and weaknesses. Moreover, this defect is naturally existing, belonging to the genetic characteristics that accompany this race from birth, severely restricting their development potential. This is probably also a program that their creators set from the very beginning. Therefore, Liang Yue has not focused on the Transformers race for the time being unless they can break their own limitations and absorb enough nutrients from humans. Otherwise, they will sooner or later be reduced to subsidiary tools. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634: Space Folding Technology. After casually collecting a few relatively intact Decepticon aircraft wrecks from the dam, Liang Yue flickered, and his entire person disappeared from the spot. Once again, this type of aircraft wasn't a transforming robot, but rather a combat aircraft similar to those appearing in Transformers 3. Overall, its technological content was a level above the mainstream fighter jets of major countries on Earth. It could freely and complexly switch between states such as supersonic flight, aerial hovering, and directional displacement, and its energy propulsion was also based on fusion reactions. This type of fighter could deliver crushing blows to so-called fifth-generation fighters, especially in close combat. But other than that, there weren't too many excessive technological components, whether in terms of energy dynamics or design concepts. They weren't too different from the development direction of human technology. The Kryptonian spaceship that Liang Yue obtained in the DC world was far superior to this kind of thing in terms of technological content. Things like inter-universe travel, energy shields, biological pods for revival and gene fusion, warp drives, faster-than-light thrusters, space jumps, phantom technology. Transformers had none of these technologies that humans considered science fiction. Liang Yue originally had some expectations for the Allspark Cube. According to the setting in the plot, its function was actually closer to the Mother Box in the DC world. It contained magical energy and also included a lot of knowledge and information similar to code. In fact, in Liang Yue's view, the energy attribute inside the Allspark could, to some extent, be compared to the Hellfire of the Ghost Rider. Both could transform and modify the things they covered, and bestow certain magical properties. The difference was that the energy in the Allspark would give various electronic products individual intelligence and personality biases, while Hellfire was only inclined towards the attributes of enchantment and modification. With the Ghost Rider as the main focus, Liang Yue felt that the reason for this difference was perhaps the effect of those knowledge and information. It was roughly equivalent to the Allspark additionally copying a new intelligent AI during the energy transmission and transformation process. Moreover, this was, after all, a product of alien technology, so it was naturally much more advanced than the full-style AI on Earth. In addition to the default settings at the time of manufacture, it was almost similar to an intelligent life with an independent personality in the eyes of Earthlings. However, Liang Yue didn't really care about these two things after truly seeing the real object of the Allspark. He was instead more interested in the technology of spatial curvature folding. For some reason, this technology couldn't help but remind him of the 11-dimensional unfolding of the Sophins in 3-body, and the ability to freely travel through high-dimensional space. And from this, Liang Yue then thought of some things about himself. Due to the advancement of the Tensigen and the awakening of the intangibility ability, Liang Yue himself was also able to freely travel in various dimensional spaces. Even without the magical knowledge mastered by Earth's mages, he could still accomplish this very calmly. This was a rather good spatial talent, but Liang Yue hadn't been able to make good use and development of it before. Firstly, it was because his main energy was focused on improving his cultivation level and creating his main cultivation method. Secondly, this guy had enough methods to deal with enemies, and there was no urgent need. He did study the swordsmanship in the special branch for a while when he was in the DC world, but that was ultimately in the category of swordsmanship, and special ability was only used as an auxiliary. Moreover, that was something used to teach disciples, and the application of special power and special rules was relatively superficial. And now, the curvature folding that the Allspark showed him, and even the multidimensional unfolding extended to the softens, was undoubtedly more high-end. It provided him with a rather good research idea in comparison. Liang Yue didn't have much interest in the Allspark itself, although the thing could mass produce transformers. Its capabilities were ultimately limited and had its own insurmountable ceiling. It was like a mobile charging pile plus a waste recycling and repair station. The Transformers regarded it as the origin and destination of the race, but for Liang Yue, it could only be regarded as a slightly crude robot production and maintenance plant at most, and it was the kind of factory that hadn't been updated for tens of thousands of years, and hadn't improved its software and hardware facilities. And Xiao had actually researched many similar products in the Stronghold world as for the source of the technology, in addition to the few Transformers that jumped in front of Liang Yue before going to the DC world. Ivan Vanko's remote-controlled robots, the intelligent program of the Kryptonian spaceship, etc., all provided enough inspiration for it. Another thing worth mentioning is that not only the 30 years of experience in the DC world, but also when the Stronghold world was upgraded before Xiao's clone program, as well as various related research laboratories, also experienced an extra journey through time, just like those spiritual medicines and plants that were sprinkled down in that time of thousands of years. Xiao's clone had deduced various technologies at hand to a very exaggerated level, of course, since Xiao itself didn't have any creativity. The basic technological theories followed were mostly still at the level of human society. Therefore, the technological system it researched still failed to transcend the limitations of realistic theory. It was roughly the same as the current Transformers, all was limited to a framework but relying on the cognitive blessing of Liang Yue, the master, and the occasional intrusion of some alien technological items. Xiao's research direction was undoubtedly more rich and colorful: biology, chemistry, physics, artificial intelligence, materials science, mechanical engineering, nanotechnology, space field, and other fields. Advancing side by side, it can be said that Optimus Prime and other Transformers in front of Xiao really have no advantage at all. Well, if the independent personality is also an advantage, maybe this is the only thing they are stronger than Xiao, because, under Liang Yue's special guidance, the robots manufactured and produced by Xiao can only reach the level of limited intelligence at most that is like Xiao. It will be artificially restrained and must follow the constraints of a certain legal framework, situations like the column-selling behavior of Dazu in the original plot, and the mysterious logic of Ultron, are impossible to happen to it. Chapter 635 Magic Heart, 2. Such special application methods are indeed somewhat different. They look profound and unfathomable, but their actual use isn't that great. When it comes to fighting, it's better to just throw a punch or slash with a knife, which is more practical and effective. Moreover, this kind of special technique places higher demands on the user, requiring a more refined control ability. From this perspective, it is indeed worth exploring in depth. However, such techniques are too subtle and don't quite align with my swordplay research direction. At least, these two directions don't have much overlap for the time being. Looks like I'll have to create an additional set of fist techniques or palm techniques to complement it, otherwise, it really won't satisfy research in this new direction. Maybe I can also combine this idea with lightness skill and body techniques. The heavenly sex fleeting shadow seems to be a good blueprint. Inside the manor, surrounded by a seemingly mirrored space, Liang Yue was currently frowning slightly, seemingly absent-mindedly propping his chin with one hand while extending the other, manipulating the small area of space within his palm as his mind moved. Square spatial phantoms, each about the size of a corn kernel, gathered from all directions, converging on his palm, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, and finally solidified into a blurred cube shimmering with layers of light and shadow. The next moment, the cube suddenly shook, completely merging into one. The mottled shadows and illusory lights fused together, no longer having distinct boundaries, and combined to expand into the size of a Rubik's Cube. Then, the light and shadow aligned, and the Rubik's Cube began to collapse and fold in a regular pattern. Starting from one corner of the cube, small pieces continuously stacked and reseated, just like the Allspark that Liang Yue had seen inside the Hoover Dam base before. In the end, this ordinary Rubik's Cube-sized special cube shrank again, stacking into the size of the previous corn kernel. But compared to the previous appearance of illusory light and shadow, at this time, this small cube seemed to have completely solidified into a solid, constantly emitting a dazzling light. The next moment, the cube suddenly began to expand, extending in all directions. Starting from one of its edges, Pieces spread out in all directions. Smaller cubes popped out abruptly, constantly stretching out in all directions, forming a multi-layered structure like a honeycomb maze until a certain moment, when the structure inside the special cube was completely unfolded. Liang Yue's entire manner was filled with groups of facets overwhelmingly dense. Fortunately, Liang Yue was conducting the experiment in a mirrored space at this time. Otherwise, that seemingly thin and small spatial facet would have been enough to quietly destroy the entire manner. Actually, compared to attacking and destroying, this application of spatial power seems more suitable for refining artifacts. Just like Zizi, after flattening and spreading out the materials, you can engrave the immortal cultivation formations on them, and then reorganize them into one, so that it can naturally carry more spells. However, the items made in this way seem to be too delicate, and the more delicate things are, the easier they are to damage. So it is best to use them on auxiliary tools. Magic weapons, such as swords and shields that require strong impacts and collisions, should still be moderately adjusted. That is buzz. Just then, as Liang Yue was sitting in his room, continuing to mutter and ponder about the in-depth application of spatial power through the mirrored space, an orange magic vortex suddenly appeared above the void about 7 or 8 meters in front of him. Soon, as the spatial channel expanded, a bald man stepped in. Master Gu Yi? What a rare guest, Liang Yue said, getting up to welcome the visitor after seeing who it was. I'm here this time to ask you for a favor. After arriving, Gu Yi didn't say any nonsense and directly stated her purpose. A hint of seriousness was faintly visible on her calm face. No problem, please speak. As another important learning place besides the trials in the heavens, the rich magic books and the New York sanctum had provided him with very important help. The spatial power that Liang Yue is currently studying originates from here. Therefore, facing Gu Yi's request for help at this time, for both emotional and rational reasons, he could not refuse as long as it was within his ability. Dormammu is trying to invade Earth again. I need to borrow the magic card at your brochure. This thing is actually just a primary magic heart. It has recently reached a bottleneck, and the storage of magic power seems to have reached its limit. As he spoke, Liang Yue gently stroked his forehead with one hand. The next moment, the magic heart flew out from his forehead. It was a perfect rhombic transparent crystal. The deep, dark blue magic power had already formed a dazzling magic vortex inside this crystal with it as the core. Once it appeared, it illuminated the entire mirrored space, and the surrounding light was suppressed somewhat dimly. It seemed that only it was the only color in this world. Then, Liang Yue sent it in front of Gu Yi without any hesitation. Extraordinarily pure magic power. And it has indeed reached the current limit of what it can carry. After looking at the magic heart floating in her palm, Gu Yi placed it on her forehead, and then she smiled and continued to Liang Yue, when I return again, I should bring you a surprise. After saying that, without waiting for him to reply, the Supreme Mage turned around and walked towards the other end of the passage through the space gate. Liang Yue could see an old stone chamber building under dim candlelight. If he guessed correctly, the opposite side should be the mage headquarters built on the Himalayas. Dormammu is attacking Earth across dimensions again. How can he be so clueless? The Supreme Mage is still here, and those few lackeys were shot by me. And even Doctor Strange is still waiting in line to take over. Forget it, never mind him, continue with the research. So, in the following time, Liang Yue once again immersed himself in the exploration of spatial power. Taking advantage of this burst of inspiration, he was currently in a stage of active thinking, and soon derived many perspectives and directions that he had never considered before. After his strength reached the golden core stage, many of Liang Yue's previous moves and secret techniques that only existed in his imagination now had enough foundation to be carried out in depth. In particular, with the addition of the first transformation of the 36 heavenly transformations, creation of the universe, and his initial entry into cultivation, it further deepened this guy's confidence in himself. After all, he was able to successfully enter the door of a technique that only true immortals are qualified to cultivate while he was still in the foundation establishment stage. Compared to that, what were Liang Yue's previous ideas? What's a pity is that time seems to be a bit tidy in the real world, is not as free as when he was training in the heavens. Various chores, coupled with the interference of the semester progress, made Liang Yue unable to completely calm down and properly retreat. Now, his research had just started, and when he looked up, it was already dawn outside the mirrored space in the distant forest. Half of the sun had already stretched out from the treetops under the morning mist. The scenery outside the mirrored space was like an impressionist landscape painting, with a hazy poetic feeling. Seeing this scene, Liang Yue could only temporarily put aside the idea of continuing to study in depth, got up and stretched. The next moment, he opened a space channel and stepped into the hall of his own manor villa. Chapter 636 Best Results. Sam and Michaela were curled up on the sofa, just like last time, one sitting and one lying down, fast asleep with greasy faces. The panoramic sand table next to them was still running, and as Liang Yue arrived, it automatically focused a covered scene on the Transformers, Captain America, Ross, the Secretary of Defense, and others. At this moment, this group of people on the sand table were gathered in a military base near the battlefield, chatting idly. Judging from their disheveled appearance, stains, and the slightly relaxed expressions amidst their exhaustion, it seemed that everyone was relaxing, unwinding, and recharging after the great battle. Perhaps due to old age and the intensity of the battle, Tony Stark was slumped in a recliner, yawning repeatedly, his eyelids almost drooping shut, yet he was still forcing himself to stay awake. Even several gulps of coffee couldn't perk him up. He looked like he was about to fall asleep. The others were not much better, either sitting or lying down. Among the Transformers, only Optimus Prime, as the leader of the Autobots, was chatting with Captain America, who had been asleep for a long time, about future cooperation plans and principles of action. Furthermore, Jazz, who had just received benefits from Liang Yue, was excitedly showing off his newly enhanced body parts to Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, and the others. According to the battle report sent by the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, the allied forces of humans and Autobots had clearly won the final victory in last night's battle for the Allspark. There wasn't much to say about the specific process. After a chase and escape, the battlefield was finally locked in a deserted canyon outside Las Vegas. After a fierce battle, the military reinforcements finally arrived, first with missile strikes, then with aerial bombardment. In the end, the Allspark was still thrown into Megatron's core reactor in his chest. However, the one who threw the Allspark was not Sam, as in the original story, but the resourceful Natasha. After a surge of powerful energy overloaded the reactor, it directly melted a large hole in Megatron's chest, and the leader instantly went offline, causing the Decepticons to scatter like frightened birds under Starscream's leadership. They fled in all directions. This is probably the best outcome for both humans and Autobots. After reading the battle report summary, Liang Yue couldn't help but sigh, whether it was a coincidence or the inertia of the plot. In any case, the disappearance of the Allspark was undoubtedly a good thing for both humans and Transformers. Humans would not sit idly by and watch the Transformers grow stronger, and the Earth at this stage could hardly accommodate two complete intelligent races. Even if the Autobots and Optimus Prime had shown enough goodwill towards humans, cooperation is possible when there are few people, and one party can be kept at home as a rare species, locked in a cage and watched like monkeys. But once the other party's numbers become too large and pose a threat to human survival, the nature of the situation will be completely different. As the leader of a faction, Big Pillar probably understands this principle, so, in the original plot, he instructed Sam that if he couldn't defeat Megatron by normal means, he should put the Allspark into the reactor in his own chest and destroy it together. This way, Bumblebee and the others would have a chance to continue to survive on Earth. The same goes for the human side. Once the US military, government leaders, and even S.H.I.E.L.D. obtained the Allspark, it would be difficult to imagine what they would do with it. After reading Xiao Wu's battle report, Liang Yue did not disturb the two sleeping beside him, but slowly entered the kitchen. After about half an hour, he came out with 3 breakfasts. With a flick of his finger, 2 streams of spiritual power entered Sam and Michaela's bodies, merging into them, nourishing their bodies and spirits while also waking them from their dreams. Afterwards, the 3 began to eat breakfast while discussing the battle last night. According to their own accounts, they provided quite important tactical intelligence to the soldiers on the front lines during the second half of the battle. To a certain extent, they even directed the layout and flow of the entire battlefield. Between their words, the two seemed very satisfied with their performance, and then they looked at Liang Yue with anticipation, waiting for his comments. Of course, he had nothing to say about this. He directly passed Sam and Michaela's admission assessment. Looking at the two who couldn't help but cheer, Liang Yue just smiled slightly. In fact, this so-called assessment was just a guise. After all, even without last night's events, he had the idea of recruiting his small group from school. With the release of the indigenous quotas and the further establishment of the Stronghold World mission system, the system obviously had a tendency to let Liang Yue expand his team. In addition, the things happening around him recently were increasing, so recruiting manpower was naturally imperative. Cultivation, aptitude, and talent were all irrelevant. The loyalty and quality of the personnel were the key issues he needed to consider. In this way, after eating breakfast, Liang Yue also told the two about the work and benefits in his team. After taking them to Xiao Wu to order some daily clothing items, he drew a circle and arrived at the newly built house near the school. In one step he got in the car and drove the two of them to school. Soon, more than a week had passed. During this period, with the publicity and encouragement of Sam and Michaela, Peter, Gwen, and Daisy, who were already members of Liang Yue's small circle, naturally joined his team without any surprises. After more than a week of adjustment and settlement, the Autobot Transformers seem to have temporarily found their place on Earth. According to Liang Yue's understanding, Optimus Prime is now leading Ironhide and Ratchet, as well as a group of new members who were accidentally born from the fragments of the Allspark in the previous battle. To join a special operations team organized by the military, they are specifically responsible for the remaining forces of the Decepticons in various parts of the Earth. Bumblebee gets along well with members such as Captain America, Natasha, and Hawkeye. They usually stay in S.H.I.E.L.D., but once there's an action, they will immediately return to the team for combat as Optimus Prime's deputy. Jazz seems to be very grateful for Liang Yue's help last time, so he ran to his manor and station there in recent days. He seems to be chatting well with Stark, who insists on coming over every day to visit. Occasionally, he will go out with this wealthy man for a spin. According to Liang Yue's observation, Stark seems to want to abduct Jazz from him. During the conversation, he also mentioned the idea of designing several new transformation and modification plans for Jazz. Unfortunately, compared to Stark, Liang Yue's treatment is obviously better because since Jazz arrived, in just less than a week, with the accumulation of years of technology and innovative methods, the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, has helped him install an external flight device. That is to say, Jazz can now fly. Chapter 637 Gene Repair. This weekend's morning, as a rare moment of free time since the team's establishment, Liang Yue had taken all the team members back to his manor yesterday afternoon. The purpose, naturally, was to take advantage of the rest time to do some team building, and then distribute the indigenous quotas in place as with a previous situation. Due to family education, parents, and other reasons, Gwen did not stay overnight at Liang Yue's house with the others, but planned to come alone this morning. For this reason, Liang Yue also specially sent Jazz to escort this woman at about a little after 8 o'clock in the morning. This Autobot with wings on his back carried Gwen, in the form of a Decepticon aircraft, and flew back from the other side of the sky. However, in addition to Gwen, who was planned, there was another group of guests who landed with him: Aunt Liu's sister Liao, Betty, Homan Ross, Stark, Director Fury, Professor Connors. As a small and medium-sized transformer, Jazz's cockpit naturally couldn't accommodate so many guests. In fact, apart from Stark, who flew over in his Iron Man armor, the others all came together in a shield quinjet. The person responsible for flying the plane was Natasha herself. It seems that they came prepared this time, at least with some kind of purpose, and they had already discussed it internally in advance for the biological repair technology we talked about before. Thinking this in his heart, Liang Yue had already greeted him from the gate of the villa, stretching out his arms and greeting everyone with a friendly face. "Welcome to my house. Oh, did you run into each other during the flight?" "Yes, kid, you should be glad that I remember Jazz's military code relatively well. Otherwise, just because of his random takeoffs and landings and flights in the city, he would definitely be shot down by our defense system." Stark walked out of his armor at this time, tidied up his suit, and then said with an unhappy face, "The air defense system in New York City is so powerful." Liang Yue asked in surprise when he heard this. "It is a set of combat systems that the Department of Defense urgently established after the Hoover Dam incident. And it was an emergency appropriation from Congress." Ross was still the serious old man at this time, which formed a sharp contrast with his daughter's smiling face. "It seems that the higher-ups in your United States have reached a consensus on certain matters." Saying that, Liang Yue stepped forward and hugged Betty. "That's true, but I think that the current air defense system is still not enough to support an early warning combat system against aliens whom maybe Stark can provide you with some help." After speaking, Liang Yue ignored the old man and took Betty to Aunt Liu's side. "Aunt Liu, thank you for your trouble this time." "No trouble, this is a good thing, but next time there is such a thing, it is best to tell me in advance." I was indeed a little surprised when Director Fury came to my door before. While speaking, Aunt Liu looked at Betty next to Liang Yue again, with a half-smiling expression, which made this woman a little embarrassed. "It's really magical. It can repair human damage from the gene level, regenerate severed limbs, repair organs, and reconstruct nerves, just like in the movies. If this is the case, then our country's planning in biology, medicine and other aspects will have to be rearranged. Not just your country, in fact, the entire world will undergo earth-shaking changes because of this, and many industries will be directly subverted, so I suggest it is best not to promote this series of technologies on a large scale for the time being. Apply it on a small scale and leave some time for those stakeholders to prepare." Nick Fury also came over at this time, and then raised his hand and pointed to Professor Connors next to him, and continued, "You should also know this person. Professor Connors, an expert in the field of biological genes, and now he has been appointed to the research institution within our shield this time. I came here together to personally experience how perfect this technology is. Hello Professor. Hello, Mr. Liang Yue. About the last time I'm sorry, due to the imperfection of the gene potion, at that time, only the most instinctive desires were left in my mind. In short, I'm sorry. It's okay, Professor, the matter has passed, the future you in this way. After exchanging greetings all the way, everyone quickly entered the reception hall. Sam, Peter, and Nazi then brought drinks, fruits, and a pile of snacks for the guests. However, although the quality of these things far exceeds similar foods on the market, the purpose of everyone's visit is obviously not here. Soon, after drinking a cup of coffee, General Ross, with a serious face, habitually wiped his small glasses and asked Liang Yue to visit the underground scientific research laboratory. In this regard, Liang Yue also readily agreed, and led everyone to take the elevator to the bottom of the castle, the basement that had been expanded again. By the way, I forgot to ask before, have you solved the Hydra issue? On the way, Liang Yue suddenly moved in his heart, turned his head and looked at Nick Fury, who is looking forward to him. The Hydra forces within us have been basically purged, but unfortunately several important figures ran away during the process. The Black Director pondered for a while after hearing this, and replied helplessly, what about Minister Alexander Pierce? Let him run away. Okay. Although the people around him probably wanted to admire his underground laboratory from beginning to end like last time, Liang Yue didn't let them get their wish this time. Instead, he went straight to the theme and led everyone all the way to a finished product equipment display area in the biological research area. The areas passed along the way were all isolated by translucent frosted metal walls, which were thick and strong, directly eliminating their prying eyes. Approaching a piece of golden transparent metal wall, with a thought, the wall in front of him suddenly moved apart. The originally smooth and clean wall suddenly moved slowly to the left and right, and there was almost no sound during the process. What then appeared in front of everyone was an indoor space of about 200 or 300 square meters. Under the bright daylight lamps, various large and small transparent glass containers were placed inside. These glass bodies are almost all cylindrical in shape. Some have a diameter of only 7 or 8 centimeters, while others can completely place a person flat in them. It is filled with a light green liquid. Upon closer inspection, this liquid seems to emit a faint glow below these containers. There are also round platform-shaped operating areas, each with different specifications. These are all medicinal liquids that can be used to repair and complete bodies. There is partial limb restoration, and also comprehensive body repair. Professor Connors, well, your body seems a little weak at the moment. You can try to carry out an overall repair. Saying that, Liang Yue looked at Connors, who was full of excitement and trying to suppress his emotions. I am willing. What do I need to do? Come with me. Chapter 638. Let's learn Chinese together. A moment later, when the professor, who appeared refined and gentle on the surface, returned, he was only wearing a pair of loose boxer shorts. Then, under Liang Yue's direction, he put a small white pill in his mouth, put on his goggles, and somewhat nervously climbed into a large vertical glass jar. Slowly, he allowed the light green liquid to soak his entire body, including his head, under the watchful eyes of everyone. After the initial discomfort, he quickly calmed down. Seeing this, Liang Yue directed Xiao Wu to seal the top cover, and then pressed a few buttons on the operating table below, and the entire machine began to run. It was very convenient and seemed very idiot-proof, which made everyone around feel both puzzled and somewhat absurd. At starting already, Peter couldn't help but open his mouth, feeling that someone's actions were a bit rash. Yes, Liang Yue didn't care. After all, the biological repair technology in front of him was no longer cutting-edge technology for the intelligent Xiao Wu and thousands of years of research and deduction. It had done such experiments countless times. What was the pill you had the professor put in his mouth just now? Stark interjected at this time. That's a concentrated pill that releases a certain proportion of air after decomposition. You mean, this medicine releases air, not pure oxygen? Yes, it's air. So magical. Then how long can it last? It can last for about an hour. In half an hour at most, the professor's arm will be repaired, and a full set of body maintenance will be completed at the same time. Are you serious? Half an hour? I thought that such a treatment process would last at least a whole day. I was even going to suggest that you install a TV on the outside of the glass or something actually, in order to prevent patients from feeling bored or even uncooperative during the treatment process. This biological treatment pod also adds a sleep function. It can directly put the treated person to sleep until the repair is completed. However, Professor Connors obviously doesn't want to do this. He wants to personally experience the process of his arm growing back. Understandable. Look. The professor's arm is starting to change, just as Stark was trying to ask Liang Yue for more details about the technical issues at hand. Gwen's reminder suddenly attracted everyone's attention. I saw that at this time. Professor Connor's arm, which had been cut off from behind the elbow, began to show some reaction. It seemed to be a sign that the skin and muscles were being dissolved at the very front of the stump. The twisted muscles and bone sarcoma were being decomposed little by little, and the surrounding light green liquid began to become a little turbid. After a while, the white bones and pink flesh were exposed at the stump. This scene immediately made everyone present feel a little uncomfortable, but strangely, Professor Connors, as the recipient, did not show any discomfort at this time. He was holding his short arm in front of him, observing with concentration. His eyes were bright, and his face was full of energy, concentrating on not missing any detail. This is dissolving the excess human tissue at the wound. For a long time before, Professor Connor's body was trying to save itself, so a lot of unnecessary microstructures accumulated on his arm. Liang Yue explained slightly in the face of everyone's doubts. In fact, this guy must know the principle. But when it comes to specific scientific terms, even if Liang Yue says it, everyone present may not be able to understand it properly. After all, the concept of English for the emergence of various new technologies and cutting-edge principles has always been to habitually recreate a batch of new words. It is impossible to arrange and combine existing words like Chinese, so that people can understand it at a glance. If Liang Yue really followed the content given by Xiao Wu and read it verbatim, it is estimated that he would have to explain various phenomena, principles, and the definition of C cards to other people all day long. You said, if I use Chinese uniformly when cooperating and promoting it, then at least in the field of biomedicine in the future, Chinese will become the mainstream. Before Aunt Liu could speak, Sister Lu Yao next to her directly answered. After speaking, this sister also raised her eyebrows at him and sent an encouraging look. Then it's settled. When I turn back, I'll let Xiao Wu uniformly process these instruments and instruction manuals. Oh, I just seem to hear something. A remarkable inside story. Stark couldn't help but tease from the side at this time. There's no way, when you were asking me about the details of this technology before, I was actually struggling with how to explain it to you. After all, there is too much new knowledge. You can't understand the newly compiled words, so I can only give you a general overview of the situation here. If this continues, I'm afraid you and the intelligent Xiao Wu will not be able to communicate, Mr. Tony. That is a problem, but learning Chinese is not easy for me either. Fortunately, I am not an expert in the field of biology. In this way, in the midst of everyone's chatting and attention, Professor Connors in the glass cover was being repaired little by little. The originally empty elbow and forearm slowly emerged from the original arm under the eyes of everyone. The wriggling of flesh buds, the stretching of blood vessels, the extension of bones, and a large number of subtle reconstructions that are simply invisible to the naked eye of ordinary people, happened in front of their eyes. Just as Liang Yue said before, it took only half an hour before and after, and Dr. Connor's right arm grew back, including the fingerprints on the surface of the palm and 5 fingers. And the slightly soft fingernails. The only shortcoming is that the newly grown forearm is still a little pale in color and is not consistent with other parts of Professor Connor's body. However, this obviously cannot disturb the good mood of this professor, who looks gentle on the outside, but is firm and even a little paranoid on the inside. When his arms and palms were still growing, he couldn't help but start moving his limbs occasionally. He would gently touch the growing tissue with his left hand. Fortunately, the operating principle of this gene repair pod does not shift according to human will. According to the intelligent Xiao Wu, that is the principle and technology constructed by it based on the complete version of the gene map constructed after collecting enough human gene data. The current Professor Connors, I dare not say that his own genes are completely consistent with this set of maps. After all, everyone is unique, and everyone is born with more or less congenital defects. But according to the pre-focused map, at least more than 90% of the problems can be solved. The remaining personalized customization services can be completed by collecting enough body tissue from Professor Connors himself, and the previous local ablation of the wound perfectly realized this process. Chapter 639 Old Tree Sprouts New Leaves. With a whoosh, Professor Connors, looking excited, climbed out of the glass tank amidst the crowd's observation and assistance. At this moment, he didn't have the heavy feeling of being soaked in water for too long. On the contrary, he appeared very agile, his body healthy and upright, his skin smooth and taut, and even the wrinkles on his face had disappeared without a trace. At a glance, he looked at least a dozen years younger, compared to the previously middle-aged professor who was focused on research. Professor Connors now seemed to have returned to his prime, Like a young man in his mid-20s, this change was unbelievable not only to the professor himself, who was like he had ADHD, constantly jumping around, stretching his arms and legs, unable to stop the others around, Ross, Nick Fury, Stark, etc., who had already entered middle age or were about to step into the next stage of life, immediately stepped forward, surrounding Professor Connors and constantly asking questions. They raised questions about personal issues and first-hand experiences, their expressions and gestures appearing somewhat eager. On the other hand, Liang Yue's team members, Sam and Peter, were also shocked by the professor's change, but they were simply amazed by the technology itself and didn't have too many personal needs. After the shock, they began to do their respective jobs, bringing Professor Connors hot coffee and some cookies. So in general, besides the newly grown muscles being a bit weak and needing to be retrained, you don't have any discomfort. Yes, I feel better than ever now. I feel like I've returned to my 20s. I want to eat meat, I want to exercise, my whole body is itching, urging me to move. You just grew an arm, so naturally you'll feel very hungry, but besides that, are there any other discomforts, such as mentally? I know what you want to ask, Director Fury, but this time, there's absolutely none. My mind is very normal. My current state is just a little excited also. What I mean by being very hungry isn't the kind of urgent need to replenish nutrients after excessive physical exertion, but similar to a yearning mentality. It's as if I could become stronger, but my current state doesn't meet my psychological expectations. Yes, that's the situation. Wow. So, the nutrients needed for you to grow this arm were compensated by that magical potion, and you think you still have them? The possibility of entering a third growth spurt, that's about the situation. This feeling is wonderful, but if you really want to understand it, I still suggest you experience it yourself, Mr. Stark. Oh, of course. Although I've always been very confident in my physical condition, but you know, I'm already in my 40s, and compared to myself a dozen years ago, there's indeed some difference. Actually, it's not just me. These two old men beside me must be thinking the same thing. Saying that, Stark ignored the glares of the little old man Ross and the one-eyed Nick Fury, turned his head to look at Liang Yue, and continued, "Hey my dear little buddy, how about arranging a repair package for me too? I also want to experience the feeling of entering a third growth spurt." "No problem, when would you like to do it?" Liang Yue asked with a smile. Upon hearing this, of course, the sooner the better, preferably starting now. After all, it only takes half an hour at most, right? So, with Stark taking the lead, the two old men present, plus Aunt Liu, Betty, and Natasha, all joined this free body repair and maintenance experience. Men and women separated, each in a room. In his words, he seemed to want to develop in this direction and tried to get some inspiration and technical support from him, but unfortunately, someone wasn't interested in this at this time. Liang Yue really wanted to refute Professor Connors' views and roots on the spot, but due to the presence of Peter and Gwen, these two readily available Spider-Men, he couldn't speak too bluntly. Simply put, Liang Yue couldn't stand these cross-species gene bodies like spiders, lizards, starfish, sharks, crocodiles, apes. The species level itself was too low. In his opinion, even if he really wanted to do cross-species fusion, the other half he fused with would at least have to be of the level of dragons, phoenixes, Kirin, vermilion birds, black tortoises, bays, and Hawaiian. On today's Earth, there are basically no species that Liang Yue can look up to. Maybe if water bears could be magnified and genes extracted, that would be a bit interesting, but it's only a bit interesting. He would never inject that kind of inexplicable potion into his body. It was precisely based on this kind of idea that the intelligent light brain, Xiao Wu, which had a deep binding with him, naturally wouldn't put too much effort in the direction he wasn't interested in. Of course, even so, after a long period of deduction and experimentation, Xiao Wu's technical accumulation in cross-species gene fusion was still much more advanced than the current Professor Connors. During the conversation, Liang Yue only commented on his ideas in a perfunctory manner, causing the senior scholar on Earth, who was at the forefront of the field, to be stunned and filled with realization and shock. Soon, half an hour passed quickly. After a period of washing and changing clothes, Ross, Nick Fury, Aunt Liu, and others reappeared in front of everyone. Compared to before, they were now completely new. The entire person's form, state, and appearance were completely different among them. The biggest change was naturally Ross. After all, this old guy was the oldest, in his 50s. Although, because he was a soldier who insisted on training all year round, he still appeared tall and upright, but inevitably, there were signs of aging on his face and body at this moment. Although he couldn't return to his 20s like Professor Connors, He was still a lot younger, as if time had flowed backward, returning to his prime. Smooth skin, resolute face, agile body, plus that head of golden hair. Standing there, he was definitely a template for a abstinent middle-aged cool guy. In addition, Nick Fury was the same. Although he didn't look old because of his originally dark skin and bald head, he still couldn't be equated with young people at this moment, not to mention the dark and smooth skin that could reflect light. Even the eye that was scratched blind by a cat had now been cured. On top of his originally bald, black, oily head, a short and dense head of black curly hair had now grown. Chapter 640 Air Passenger Transport. So now that we've experienced your gene repair technology, it's truly amazing, enough to disrupt the entire market. But besides that, do you have any other arrangements planned for us today at your place? A moment later, inside in the underground research lab, having truly experienced the precursors of triple awakening, the 6 people who had just emerged from the repair pods ultimately couldn't resist the temptation of food. They helped themselves to a pile of snacks, refreshments, yogurt, fruit, cookies, etc., from the refrigerator and began to devour them. But the delicious food still couldn't suppress Stark's curiosity. While throwing a piece of chocolate into his mouth and chewing heartily, he didn't forget to subtly hint to Liang Yue about the next part of the agenda. Which aspect are you referring to? Liang Yue asked, taking a sip of coffee while looking at the wealthy man. Anything. For example, that gravity wave skateboard you showed us last time. I feel like you should have some surprises for us. After speaking, Stark even raised his eyebrows at Liang Yue, giving him a meaningful look of anticipation. We've indeed achieved some results in the application of gravity wave technology. Apart from not being able to independently innovate new fields, the smart optical brain is definitely more efficient than the human brain when it comes to research. Do you know what this means? Upon hearing his words, Ross looked at him with a face full of emotion and complexity. The automotive and energy industries will be overturned, and the real estate industry will face an avalanche. Liang Yue spread his hands helplessly upon hearing this. Also, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, welfare and elderly care, life sciences, family ethics, and even the insurance industry, and a series of related fields. Anything you can think of. Even if its correlation with it on the surface isn't strong, it will still be strongly affected, so you need to act cautiously. Aunt Liu said somewhat absent-mindedly while wiping her mouth with a tissue. While speaking, a pair of beautiful eyes couldn't help but flicker with various expressions. Obviously, this aunt, who has now returned to her youthful and lovely years, seemed to be considering the impending turmoil that the entire human society would soon face. This was definitely a major event for the family and country behind her. Do you have a sample? After a moment of silence, Stark finally temporarily relinquished the temptation of the delicacies in front of him, rinsed his mouth with a mouthful of coffee, and then stood up and looked at Liang Yue with a serious expression. Yes, let's go. So, a moment later, the group returned to the ground on the small square in front of the castle. Jazz, who had transformed back into a super sports car, transformed into his humanoid form upon seeing Liang Yue and the others appear, and then asked with some surprise, has your trip to the research lab ended? Far from it. This matter is a bit big, buddy, but it should be a good thing for you. It won't be long before the equipment on your body will be upgraded again. Why? Just wait and see. Over here. After Stark and Jazz finished their brief exchange, Liang Yue waved his hand in front of everyone's eyes and took out an Airbus train from the Stronghold world. This was a large bus, at least 2 sizes larger than the passenger cars and school buses on the American market, with a simple rectangular design. Seamless and angular except for the windows made of transparent metal, the whole body was black and blue. From a distance, it looked like a transport vehicle from a large construction site. And according to the official data from Xiao, this air passenger transport was 9 meters high, 13 meters wide, and 28 meters long, and it had no wheels. After appearing, the whole thing just floated quietly in the open space about 20 centimeters above the ground, extremely stable and silent. Silently, it gave people a visual impact and a sense of oppression. Gulp. Unconsciously, everyone present swallowed their saliva afterwards. Ross, Nick Fury, Stark, Aunt Liu, Sam, Nizzy, and others silently stepped forward and stroked the thick body of the car with their hands, the feeling in hand. In addition to the solid and smooth touch of metal, the temperature was always maintained at around 20 degrees anyway. With human body temperature, it was impossible to easily change this temperature. Pushing hard also couldn't make it produce the slightest displacement. Knock knock. After a while, everyone finally came back to their senses. Stark took a deep breath, knocked on the body of the car with his hand, turned his head to look at Liang Yue here, and asked with a complex expression of excitement and absent-mindedness, what's the deal with this big guy? Small and medium-sized air passenger transport, Set as a civil transport vehicle, constant temperature of 22 degrees Celsius, stable air pressure inside the car, can freely adjust the flight altitude between 10 centimeters above the ground and a relative height of 800 meters. The maximum speed is limited to twice the speed of sound, mainly used for transportation of express delivery, machinery, etc., and can also be modified into fire trucks, airplanes, etc. While speaking, Liang Yue pressed his palm on the body of the car in the midst of everyone's tangled and incredible expressions. Immediately, an electronic fluorescent palm print appeared on it, and then immediately afterwards, a 3-meter-high metal door retracted inward and moved horizontally to the side. Want to come up for a ride? After speaking, without waiting for others to answer, Liang Yue stepped up on his own. Upon seeing this, Stark and the others hurriedly followed closely behind, and in a blink of an eye, they boarded the carriage. Different from the oppressive appearance of this passenger transport, the interior decoration of the carriage took on a simple, bright, and warm style. With a white main body and gray stripe design, the edges and corners, layout, etc. inside the car were all round excluding the driver's seat. There were also 12 sofa seats and 2 vertical rows in the cockpit. In addition, there were also facilities such as a bedroom, bathroom, smoking room, freezer, and kitchen. In terms of comfort, it was definitely better than first class. In addition, this was only the first floor. Above the cockpit, there was another more spacious activity room. Behind the cockpit was the cargo hold, which was naturally empty at the moment, but it still couldn't stop everyone's enthusiastic footsteps, and they were looking around non-stop. A moment later, Liang Yue here commanded Xiao to start the air passenger transport, and quietly, it had already flown to a height of 500 or 600 meters during the process. The passengers in the cabin hardly felt any discomfort if it weren't for Sam and others occasionally observing the changing scenery outside through the car windows. They probably wouldn't have realized that they were flying just like that. For about 20 minutes Liang Yue commanded Xiao to take everyone in the car for a circle around New York City. When they landed again and returned to their manor, Ross, Aunt Liu, Professor Connors, and others were still a little unable to recover. Even Liang Yue's classmates were silent after returning to the living room of the villa, and everyone drank the tea personally brewed by Liang Yue. They calmed down slightly. What do you plan to do? Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., sighed softly at this time and took the lead in speaking. What do you mean? What do I plan to do? Liang Yue asked back, curving the corners of his mouth. It would be a pity if such good technology were to be kept at home all the time, whether it's the previous gene repair technology or the gravity wave anti-gravity technology. That kind of air passenger car just now should only be a part of your gravity wave research results, right? I noticed that the parameters of that cabin, whether it's air pressure, temperature, ceiling, or gravity perception, etc., can maintain a fairly good stability during the flight. Has this technology reached aerospace standards? Space travel is probably no longer a problem for you, so what do you plan to do? After speaking, the black director kept staring at Liang Yue, his 2 round eyes staring unblinkingly. The others were pretty much the same, focusing their attention on him and waiting for Liang Yue's answer. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641. Keep it simple. What, are you going to share my technology? Saying that, Liang Yue put the coffee cup in her hand on the table, and then looked at Nick Fury opposite. I don't have this plan, but it does not rule out that other people will have this idea, or even action. Seeing this, the black director immediately leaned back tactically and spread his hands. Then next, I will answer your question with practical actions. As for whether this cooperation will leak his technical secrets, so that they will be copied and pasted by some interested people, Liang Yue is not too worried about this. After all, this is the research result of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu for thousands of years, not to mention how advanced the technology is. A series of genetic insurance, targeted blurring, data closed loop and other scientific research confidentiality measures are not something they can crack now at this moment. Seeing that Liang Yue and Nick Fury had successfully reached an agreement on cooperation, General Ross on the side seemed to have different opinions and directly interjected, I think this method is not perfect enough. Although the previous cooperation project between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ms. Liu has been very successful, it is only limited to small-scale organizations and groups. It should not be able to meet the volume of our military, so I suggest adding a larger cooperation plan on the basis of this project. For example, by our American military cooperate with you, Liang Yue, to establish a larger medical institution. You don't have to worry about the site, facilities, and personnel. Of course, you can also contract part of the project construction and send a certain amount of supervision and accounting personnel to join in, but in addition to this, you only need to provide the corresponding technology, medical equipment, and that magical biological liquid. In addition, I will find a way to let Betty serve as the president of this medical institution. Me? I don't seem to be an expert in biological medical science. Hearing that her father actually proposed that she be the president, Betty was a little confused at this time. She obviously didn't expect her old father to have such a trick in advance. You don't need to understand those things. In fact, Professor Connors may not be able to understand the specific operations in those gene technologies, so you only need to sit in that position and receive a high salary. All I want is someone who can talk to Liang Yue when necessary. After Ross finished speaking, he looked at Liang Yue here with a blank expression. Unfortunately, after gene repair and maintenance, his nearsightedness has been cured. Without the blessing of glasses, the little old man's majesty has automatically dropped by dozens of percentage points after receiving Ross's signal. Liang Yue looked at Betty. What do you think? Okay, I agree. Looking at Betty's current dilemma, at a loss, her eyes kept wandering back and forth between her boyfriend and her father, unable to make up her mind. Liang Yue agreed in one gulp. However, due to production capacity and other issues, the cooperation agency with the military is limited to this one, and it is only responsible for the domestic market in the United States. That's enough, then. Happy cooperation later. I will let the military representatives come to discuss the specific matters of cooperation. This matter will be handled by Stark to help me with the negotiations. As a reward, I will give a gene repair cabin to Stark Group, and to the lawyers responsible for participating in the negotiations and their families provide a free medical service, or the corresponding quota is also acceptable. With the greatest pleasure. Stark would naturally not refuse such a good thing. Originally, in the heart of this dog tycoon, he was probably thinking about how to get a gene repair cabin from Liang Yue's hands. Not to mention anything else, at least he and Pepper Potts need at least one personal dedicated home version repair cabin. In addition, within the group, excellent employees and veterans on the board of directors occasionally need to give out some benefits. As a rich man with cleanliness, how can one be enough? However, this matter is not urgent. Soon, General Ross pulled Stark aside to discuss cooperation, while Nick Fury found Aunt Liu, who had been sitting firmly on the diaoyate, smiling and saying nothing. In this way, after about half an hour, the cooperation framework between the two parties was finalized. The rest is some minor details and the polishing of legal rigor, which requires professional talents to confront each other. After this matter came to an end, everyone present was still a little unsatisfied and felt that they had not had enough fun, so they all looked at Liang Yue again. Stark looked at the watch on his wrist with great seriousness, and then asked him with a look of anticipation, "There is still a long time before lunch. You should have prepared other programs here, right?" "Well, originally, if you guys didn't come today, I was going to have a team building in our small team, and then send a satellite into the sky. By the way, in fact, since returning from DC, launching a satellite has become an inevitable arrangement for Liang Yue. Otherwise, in the future, if he encounters events like the Transformers before, he will have to rely on the support of Stark and others. Again, too much trouble. Now it is a weekend, everything is suitable. Naturally, it is a good opportunity to deal with such trivial matters. Launch a satellite? How are you going to launch it? Rent a rocket or do it yourself? This thing needs to apply for an orbit in advance. As soon as they heard that this guy was going to send a satellite into the sky, Stark and others' eyes lit up, especially Liang Yue's group of little partners, each with a look of expectation on their faces, and asked, "Of course I will launch it myself. Renting a rocket, that's too much trouble and a waste of resources. As for the orbit application, Xiao Wu has already lined up a few days ago." "Then how many are you going to launch?" "Satellite technical parameters, it's enough to launch 3 for the time being. The technology is the same as the one you gave me last time." Of course, on this basis, Xiao Wu has also made some necessary upgrades. Saying that, Liang Yue walked out of the castle again, and everyone around him unconsciously followed him towards the door. It is still the small square in front of the door. The black and blue behemoth that someone called a small and medium-sized air passenger transport vehicle is now quietly parked there. But this time Liang Yue is not going to ride in this flying car, but took out a smaller one with a wave of his hand. Unlike this rectangular express delivery vehicle, the new appearance in front of everyone is probably a flat and long polygonal semi-cylinder. The cross-section faces down, and the polygonal semicircle is on top. The surface is crisscrossed, with distinct edges and corners. At first glance, It looks like a Picasso-style ladybug lying on the ground. It is very challenging to everyone's aesthetics. How could you build such a spaceship? Can this thing go to the sky? This was made by Xiao Wu himself, designed from Xiao Wu? Is it a new type of aerodynamics principle? With a gravity shield, the spaceship no longer needs to follow any aerodynamics. It can fly no matter how it is made, so Xiao Wu simplifies everything. I see. Chapter 642 Sound Wave Satellite. Soon, under the gaze of everyone, Liang Yue rode the strange spacecraft and soared into the sky, disappearing from their side in just a few seconds afterward. Aunt Liu and Betty, among others, hurriedly returned to the reception hall, with even Jazz cautiously following behind. As soon as they entered, Stark skillfully summoned Xiao Wu, instructing it to open the panoramic sand table and contact Liang Yue soon. The video call connected. On the other end of the video, Liang Yue stood with his hands clasped behind his back, calmly watching the rapidly changing scenery outside the window at this moment. The spacecraft was in the process of breaking through the atmosphere. The outside world was a scene of turbulent winds and parting clouds to reveal the sun. The color of the sky gradually deepened, changing from a clear sky blue to a deep, purplish blue in the blink of an eye, and soon turned pitch black. Stark manipulated the video window to pan around, and then discovered that the cabin where Liang Yue was located was still empty. Apart from a pile of buttons, dashboards, and seats, there was almost nothing of use. What about the satellite launch that was promised? What are you planning to do, kid? When we reach the vicinity of the designated orbit, I'll throw the satellite out, and it will automatically adjust its position. After saying that, Liang Yue's entire body suddenly blurred, as if turning semi-transparent, and disappeared from the cabin. The next moment, he appeared in the outer space. Through the video, everyone discovered that Liang Yue was not wearing any equipment at this time, except for a well-made black Taoist robe with a white inner lining on the right side. He was basically empty-handed. The extreme cold and higher radiation of the universe seemed to have no effect on him. Liang Yue's movements were extremely swift. On the opposite side of the video, the pitch black scene made the surrounding frame of reference extremely blurry. Liang Yue was currently maintaining a posture with his hands clasped inside his sleeves and his head facing forward. He seemed to be standing still, without even a strand of hair or a sleeve moving, but in reality, he was moving at high speed. After about 10 seconds, he was seen standing again and extending one hand. Suddenly, a flash of blurred light appeared, and a hexahedron with sides of about 10 meters suddenly appeared beside him. Immediately afterward, the wings of the hexahedron began to slowly rotate, and at the same time, a burst of light and flame suddenly rose from the end of the wings, and soon propelled the main body of the satellite to fly away on its own. In this way, a satellite was launched. Seeing this, Liang Yue didn't stay any longer, and his body once again turned semi-transparent, slowly blending himself into the nearby space. In a trance, after passing through a layer of diaphragm, he directly reached the orbital position of the next area designated by the intelligent brain Xiao Wu. In fact, the principle and application of the virtualization ability that Liang Yue awakened are similar to the circle drawing and gate opening technique of the Mage Sanctum. Both are a way of moving that involves confirming spatial coordinates and then moving in a leapfrog manner to the designated location. The difference is that the virtualization talent ability uses Liang Yue himself to dissolve and neutralize the diaphragm, and directly travel through various spaces, subspaces, and even mirror spaces. The Mage's gate opening technique, on the other hand, indirectly imitates traces in the void with his own magic power, and uses this to penetrate space and connect the two places. The forms have their own advantages and disadvantages, but the principles are basically the same. However, in comparison, Liang Yue's virtualization ability is obviously more comprehensive and practical. Only a moment later, all three satellites had been launched by him. Through some fragmented pictures, the people on the opposite side of the video discovered that although the location where Liang Yue was before could be generally regarded as the same trajectory, his direction of movement almost covered the entire globe at this moment. The three satellites are running separately in the outer space of the equator. After the satellites completed the network connection, the signal began to connect, and the panoramic sand table in the reception hall changed accordingly, and the covered area instantly spread to the entire planet. For a time, almost all the scenery on the Earth was presented on it, whether it was the subtle ripples, waves, the flowing clouds and storms in the sky, or the mountains on the ground, transportation networks, moving cars, bicycles, buildings in the city, pedestrians, billboards, soaring birds and airplanes in the sky, even fishing boats and warships on the sea, snorkelers and submarines under the sea, etc. None of them could escape. And all of them jumped onto it. Of course, some secret magic areas and places covered by mysterious forces were excluded. It wasn't that Xiao Wu didn't have this ability, But Liang Yue cancelled this function display in advance to avoid some unnecessary troubles afterward. Just as everyone in the living room was busy searching and exploring on the sand table, Liang Yue had quietly returned to the side of the semicircular spacecraft he was in earlier. Just as he was about to turn around and get into the car, his figure suddenly paused, and his originally leisurely and calm gaze suddenly fixed on a dimly lit direction. The next moment, the corners of Liang Yue's mouth curled up in a playful smile. And then he flew quickly toward the front. About half a minute later, he came to a strangely shaped satellite. This guy had about 5 solar metal sails, like wings majestically erected behind him, and there were groups of energy propulsion devices flashing blue light at the joints. The middle of the body was a circular body similar to a large high-magnification camera. The symmetry line of the body was facing the position of the Earth, and a mechanical head was placed horizontally on it. At this time, it looked at itself with a look of astonishment and viciousness. Jazz, do you recognize this guy? Through the video connection, Liang Yue asked the autobot in his living room. Him, that should be Soundwave, Megatron's intelligence officer. An important figure in the Decepticons, who can transform into a satellite and live in outer space for a long time. A very troublesome guy. It's best not to let him run away. After only one glance, Jazz accurately judged the identity of the guy on the opposite side, obviously an old opponent. When the others in the living room saw this, they refocused their attention on the video. But Stark acted independently and quickly mobilized Xiao Wu's budget resources to focus the attention of the panoramic sand table in front of him on the outer space where they were located. So in the next moment, the scene of Liang Yue and Soundwave confronting each other in outer space suddenly appeared in front of everyone against a backdrop of half a curved Earth. Two creatures were floating in the universe. The difference in size between the two sides was so vast. Liang Yue's height was about 1.9 meters, while the Decepticon on the opposite side was as tall as 8 meters, and the 5 backward-sloping silver sails were like the metal wings of an angel, domineering and cold at first glance. The strength of the two sides did not seem to be on the same level at all. Unfortunately, the development of things is not determined by whether the appearance is cool enough to determine the outcome. In just half a breath, chains of bullets began to be transmitted from all parts of Soundwave's body, quickly covering the sails behind him. A foreseeable metal torrent was about to be staged. Looking back at Liang Yue at this time, he had already flashed and appeared behind Soundwave. He was holding a blue reaction core that he had just dug out from the opponent's chest, tossed it in his hand, and then threw it into the stronghold world. Looking at Soundwave at this time, he didn't seem to have recovered from the change of losing his energy core. And the bullet chains on his body were still rotating, but his entire head had weakly drooped down. The eyes that were flashing orange light also lost their luster. Chapter 643 Biological Dormancy. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed just as expected. After seeing off the crowd of visitors from home, Liang Yue's side did not become peaceful. Instead, the noise and worldly affairs became more and more intense. Before Aunt Liu accepted his commission and technical investment and started the cooperation project with S.H.I.E.L.D., she naturally had to communicate with the country about this kind of technology that can directly reach the muscles and repair and maintain the human body from the genetic level. After all, this thing is of great importance and has far-reaching influence, not to mention how many disabled, blind, deaf, and patients with neurological diseases, or those with congenital organ deficiencies, would benefit from this technology after it is released to the world. The function of human body maintenance alone, which can rejuvenate middle-aged and elderly people, treat diseases, nourish the body, and make up for physical deficiencies, is enough to change many people and many things. Moreover, according to several trial versions of the gene biocabin and the annotations in the instruction manual that Liang Yue sent to Aunt Liu afterwards, in addition to repair, treatment, and health preservation, it actually has a function that makes many people look at it with admiration. Biological hibernation. Its general principle is similar to the hibernation behavior of some animals in nature. Both are technical means to reduce consumption, reduce activity and metabolism, and to save time. What is different is that the biological hibernation technology developed by Xiao Wu is much more advanced than those autonomous behaviors based on animal instincts, energy consumption, etc., is naturally compensated by the biological nutrient solution. In addition, during the hibernation process, various diseases and defects suffered by the human body that cannot be treated by Xiao Wu's biotechnology will also be subjected to targeted local or whole-body freezing treatment to wait for a certain moment in the future. With the continuous progress of medical technology, the patient can be properly treated. However, so far, the intelligent brain Xiao Wu has not found any incurable patients in human society. It is precisely because of the introduction and crazy spread of this technology that Liang Yue's side has been pushed to the forefront again. Now, for ordinary people, He is just an ordinary high school student who can't be more ordinary. At most he is a bit talented, can write popular novels, and has made a lot of money, but for people in other classes, that's another matter according to the information gathered by the intelligent brain Liang Yue. In the past few days alone, the frequency of his name appearing on the internet, telephone signals, satellite transmission, and other channels has increased by at least 300% compared to usual. Obviously, someone among the people who came to his house to visit that day leaked the secret, and Liu's side and the US military side are both possible. However, this is unavoidable as far as Liang Yue himself is concerned. When he introduced this technology to Aunt Liu, Nick Fury, and others, he had already anticipated this situation. Liang Yue's original intention in doing this was actually just to support our country's construction in an indirect way, just as a certain black egg director said, if such a good technology is kept in his hands to collect dust, it would be a pity. In addition, although the cooperation project between the US military and him is still under negotiation, but according to Stark, who came to visit, General Ross had written a detailed report on what he saw and heard at Liang Yue's house that day and submitted it, and afterwards, he personally appeared to explain the situation and performed a class of physical beauty and sports courses for a group of elderly people in the upper echelons of the United States. Therefore, the medical institutions required for this cooperation project have now been selected for the construction site, and they are directly renovated and constructed in a spare military base in the central desert area, and all the procedures are simplified and expedited. And a large number of military professional arms have been sent there, with a general and a special commissioner of the president personally sitting in command considering the construction of some supporting facilities, as well as the preparation work for the upgrading of lines and equipment. It is estimated that this facility can be put back into use in a month at most. It seems that the advent of biological gene repair technology has indeed attracted the attention of many people, and according to Stark, it seems that the report written by Ross has been spread among certain groups of people in the past few days alone at least. The fact that Stark Group has a gene repair cabin has been unknowingly understood by the shareholders within his Stark board of directors after witnessing the changes in Stark himself. A considerable number of old guys hidden behind the scenes and their family members began to come to the door impatiently, demanding to personally verify the actual effect of this technology. Regarding this, Stark was also very patient. It's not to say that he is reluctant to consume any gene repair fluid. In fact, as long as he speaks, Liang Yue should immediately deliver it to his door without hesitation. He himself firmly believes in this. The problem is that Stark, as a member of the upper class with a cleanliness fetish, is very unaccustomed to sharing an object with others, especially those he is not familiar with and does not like. Think about it. What kind of people are those who rush to the door and ask for gene repair and maintenance? They are basically old people, and they are still old people with money and power, so that Stark is not easy to refuse directly, because among those people, many are his partners, and even in terms of seniority, he has to call them uncles and grandfathers when he meets them. But no matter how powerful they are still old people. Think of the age spots on their bodies, the skin and hair that are about to fall off, and the body fluids, the rustling and astringent smell that rushes straight to nose as soon as you get close. It is simply too difficult for the great Mr. Stark to share a cabin with this group of people. So, with this kind of thinking, Stark brought Pepper to the door yesterday. In addition to wanting to do a gene maintenance package for Pepper directly in Liang Yue's basement, the purpose was to ask him to buy another set of gene repair cabins. Regarding this, Liang Yue didn't have any resistance in his heart. After all, he could directly give Stark a set because of the negotiations with the military, and it is not a problem to take out another set now. As for the price, Liang Yue ordered a batch of relatively rare laboratory raw materials from Stark. Chapter 644 Unexpected Visitors. That afternoon, Liang Yue had just returned home from school. The few young companions who had received the native resident quotas had also quickly rushed to the apartment he rented near the school afterward. They couldn't wait to reply to him for going to the stronghold world. That's right. During the previous weekend, after sending away Stark and a few other greasy adults who were leeching off his technology and food, Liang Yue distributed the system native resident quotas as planned. Peter, Sam, Gwen, Yamamoto, Neko, and Michaela, a total of 5 people, which was just a drop in the bucket considering the total of 500 native resident quotas after bringing them into the stronghold world. Besides initially showing them around his small village and giving them a brief introduction to the basic situation of Mech in order to quickly improve their strength, Liang Yue then took the 5 of them to run instances. As a result, in a day and a half on the weekend, which translated to more than 10 days in the stronghold world, he led his little companions through the normal difficulty of the Diablo 2 instance. Then, Sam and the others successfully changed jobs, Gwen and Peter chose to become assassins, Nico changed jobs to become a mage, Michaela became an Amazon, and Sam, this guy, broke the mold and changed jobs to become a barbarian. In short, with initial self-protection ability and the professional system. The enthusiasm in the hearts of the little companions was unprecedentedly high, but Liang Yue did not continue to take them to wander around in the instance, nor did he allow them to rashly start the nightmare difficulty of Diablo 2, but instead took them to the Black Marsh and the Zombie Mine instances after they were familiar with the terrain inside. He let them temporarily train in these two low-level instances to increase their own combat experience. Today, naturally, would be no exception as for Jinxiang Sensei, Arwen, Xiao Zhao, and others. They had hardly shown their faces these days, and had not even met Peter and the others. This was because the ladies had been staying in the public world of water margin heroes. It was said that they seemed to be busy managing their own heavenly sect, Flowing Cloud Mountain Gate, which had only recently been established in the southeastern suburbs of Bianlian. After experiencing the DC world, they had naturally accumulated a lot of experience in teaching disciples. According to the information occasionally sent back by Nana and others, the water margin Flowing Cloud sect was now operating in full swing under their management, making rapid progress among the disciples who were accepted into the sect. The women also discovered many intelligent children and teenagers. Most of them were refugees who had come to Bianlian, and a small number were children from farming families living in the surrounding villages. Not many noble children in Bianlian City, or even some local clans, chose to join the Mountain Gate. Even if there were, they were mostly just insignificant members of the clan. So in this situation, outstanding people were rare. This was probably related to the general environment of emphasizing literature and suppressing martial arts in the Northern Song dynasty. In short, just like before in the DC world, this time after returning to the water margin heroes world, the group of young ladies opened their mountain gates and began to recruit disciples. What was different was that compared to the quota allocation model in the DC world, the women were now more strict in the selection of entry apprentices. They needed to pass a series of basic tests before they could successfully enter the mountain gate of the Flowing Cloud sect. After entering the sect, the first thing they had to experience was still cultural enlightenment, the 4 books and 5 classics, and the study of various Taoist classics. Therefore, the young ladies still followed the previous template and established an academy in the village at the foot of the mountain belonging to the sect. The scale was not small, enough for thousands of people to enter the school at the same time. Of course, their own Flowing Cloud sect certainly didn't need so many disciples, so far, Arwen and others had probably only recruited 300 or 400 people. At the same time, in order to maintain the daily operation of the sect, the young ladies also specially asked the intelligent brain Xiao to design several sets of retro-style machine workshop production lines, specially used to produce various antique goods. Among them, most were daily necessities closely related to the lives of the people, such as toothbrushes, paper bags, belts, underwear, toothpaste, shampoo, soap, mirrors, cosmetics, etc. Because they were cheap and of good quality, they had now become a small famous brand in Bianlian City. Once they were put on Xia Chen's grocery store shelves, they would be snapped up by a group of people. In short, the young ladies' current pace of life was very comfortable and fulfilling, and they probably wouldn't have time to come back and pay attention to someone in a short time. Immediately afterward, a light curtain popped up in front of Liang Yue's eyes. What was displayed on the light curtain was the surveillance video at the entrance of the manor. Through the windshield of the sports car that was gradually approaching, Liang Yue saw an unexpected figure, so he immediately ordered Xiao to open the door, and he himself put down the fruit plate and walked quickly towards the door. As for Jazz, who had been parked nearby, he had finally couldn't bear the loneliness these days and went out to play with Stark. The door of the sports car was pushed open, and a woman wearing thick-soled high heels, black suit shorts, and a white long shirt walked down unhurriedly. A pair of dark blue sunglasses rested on her tall nose. Her golden hair was tied high, and she held a coffee cup in her hand. Simple clothes, coupled with a delicate face, and the fair and slender legs that were enough to blind others' eyes, immediately attracted all of Liang Yue's attention. Yo, whose beauty is this? Why does she look so familiar? Liang Yue was walking closer at this time, while still not forgetting to tease a little. Hearing this, the beauty, whose pretty face originally seemed to coexist with coldness and elegance, couldn't help but grin and smile. But the next moment she continued to put on a straight face. She raised her chin, looked at Liang Yue and said, "What, are you expressing dissatisfaction with me?" Liang Yue naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to give an answer at this time, but instead walked straight up and hugged the beauty in his arms after rubbing her fragrant hair back and forth for more than 10 seconds. He looked at the other party's slightly shy and annoyed eyes with a serious face and said softly, "I miss you, Humph. Has the previous magic been redeemed yet?" "Not yet, Humph. So you have something to ask of me?" "Yes, I was originally concentrating on seclusion, and wanted to transform the ability copied from you into magical ciphertext as soon as possible, but a few days ago, my family suddenly contacted me. To be honest, I was also very surprised by this kind of thing." "So, that old lady from your family, is she trying to live for a few more decades?" "Is your biological gene technology that magical? If used properly, it can indeed achieve longevity. For example, Stark once told me that the old guy behind one of the shareholders of his group wanted to cut off his entire body, leaving only a head, and then soaking it in a gene repair pod to grow a new person, so that his body can return to the state of a 20-year-old, and then through gene recuperation and nourishing methods gradually update and iterate the cells on that head. Can it be done? There is absolutely no problem with the technology, as long as they can get over the hurdle in their own minds. In theory, as long as the human brain has not died, it can be completely realized. That's terrible. Chapter 645. The world is too complicated. Afterward, Liang Yue pulled the long unseen Elizabeth around his castle, giving her a tour from the living room on the first floor to the rooftop, overlooking the entire estate and the surrounding vast forest. From the top floor gym and indoor swimming pool to the underground research lab, from the library to the showroom, from the attic to the kitchen. Then, they went to the bedroom. Soon, more than 3 hours had passed quickly, and the sky outside the window had completely darkened. The sound instantly made the woman's already rosy face even more flushed. Seeing this, Liang Yue grinned amidst the beauty's dissatisfaction, picked her up, and sat down, before continuing. "Take a shower first, and I'll get you something to eat." "What would you like?" "Something light, plus a glass of ancient fruit wine." "That's easy, I'll go prepare it for you." With that, Liang Yue took a piece of underwear from the cabinet next to him, put it on, and walked towards the kitchen under the woman's amorous gaze. A moment later, when he returned to the bedroom with a plate of food, Elizabeth seemed to still be in the bath, so he carried the plate directly into the bathroom. For the next 3 days, Liang Yue directly took leave from school because this guy usually performed well in school, was excellent in character and studies, and was friendly and helpful. He was a model student in the class, so the leave application went very smoothly. 3 days later, Elizabeth parted ways with him again, taking a packaged sample experience machine of the gene therapy pod, and set off with a fully armed motorcade with Liang Yue, this nominally official girlfriend, personally negotiating. The cooperation between the British side and him naturally proceeded very smoothly. The model was similar to his agreement with the US military. The British side provided funding, land, and personnel, while Liang Yue provided technology and equipment, jointly establishing a high-end sanatorium in a secret area of the British Isles. However, the ambitions of the British side were obviously not limited to their small domestic market. What they were seeking was actually the agency rights that could radiate to the entire Europe. Regarding this intention of the other party, Liang Yue was initially somewhat hesitant, but under Elizabeth's strong persuasion, they finally succeeded anyway. Apart from the British negotiating representatives, he was not familiar with the forces of other European countries so far. All parties are still observing his gene technology apart from the United States taking the advantage of being close to the water, and the personal advantage of the British representatives. No other country has sent people to contact him yet, of course, except for the Chinese representatives. After all, Aunt Liu and Liang Yue themselves represented a position, and Aunt Liu, as an intermediary, has also been fulfilling her identity and responsibilities very well recently through Aunt Liu's matchmaking. A cooperation agreement with a huge preferential quota has been signed by Liang Yue and the US-based representatives under Elizabeth's observation. The first batch of trial models has also been transported back to Beeping under the witness of both parties. As with a previous cooperation project, Liu Yaoji will serve as Liang Yue's full representative, responsible for coordinating with the officials, although Aunt Beihizi and others are not supervising this time. Liang Yue believes that the officials will definitely not let him suffer losses in comparison. Aunt Liu's project with S.H.I.E.L.D. is also progressing rapidly, and with the intervention of many local forces, the cooperation between the two sides is proceeding smoothly. Even the originally unrelated Stark group came to join in this time, but not to intervene in the cooperation, but to participate in the construction of the new medical institution. They forcibly bit off a piece of meat from the ongoing discussion of the design and construction plan of the new institution. This gene therapy technology itself is extremely advanced, so naturally, it cannot be massively introduced to the market all at once. Otherwise, the impact on related industries would be enough to make many people go to the rooftop overnight. The impact on the entire society is too great, therefore, for the time being, it can only be a small-scale, trial application within a certain range. Therefore, Aunt Liu's original hospital cannot be moved and still needs to operate as usual, responsible for receiving people who do not meet the gene therapy level standards, and the gene therapy services provided to shield and even certain classes, whether for confidentiality or for the purpose of upgrading service levels, need to be located elsewhere. On this point, all parties quickly reached a consensus whether it is Aunt Liu herself, the interest groups she represents, the relevant Chinese units, or the U.S. high-level officials, and local forces in New York. They have all expressed their support, and this support is substantial. The northernmost part of New York City, next to Liang Yue's manor, and opposite Stark Group's industrial park, a forest has now been designated separately for the construction and use of this sanatorium. Firstly, the environment there is better and the transportation is convenient, and secondly, it is very close to Aunt Liu's own hospital. But perhaps for safety and other factors, after many discussions, the final location was still set in the inland area of the northern suburbs. After all, such a precious cutting-edge technology like gene therapy. What if one day a supervillain organization suddenly had a whim and directly broke into the sanatorium from the sea, robbed it and ran away in the process? They would kill a few dignitaries. The vast sea, there would be no way to find them at that time. This kind of thing may not be likely to happen in reality, but in this comprehensive world, anything is possible. In short, Aunt Liu's new medical institution is taking shape very quickly. Even if it is not like the U.S. military, which directly builds new tiles on old houses, and has a large number of professional soldiers directly involved in the construction, it only took more than half a month to complete the basic construction to achieve such a rate. The support of all parties is definitely indispensable. Don't look at the fact that the military's sanatorium is made in the USA, but not many people are destined to be able to live in it. Most of the places must be used by the military and some interest groups associated with the military. But the problem is that the United States has two parties. The military is naturally closer to some military-industrial enterprises. In this case, another part of the interest groups will inevitably be treated differently, although it is not to the point where there is a situation where people are not treated when they are sick, or requests are deliberately delayed. However, with this geographical and procedural advantage, it will inevitably be used by some people to exchange some interests and ships. And Aunt Liu's institution belongs to foreign capital, but it adopts an open business model. Although it is not open to the general public for the time being, the treatment and recuperation are clearly priced and will not add any additional conditions. This model undoubtedly meets the interests of another group of people, although they have always been at odds with Aunt Liu and the Chinese behind her, and often make unfounded accusations with some concepts of democracy and freedom. But on this matter, they naturally came together. Liang Yue can only say that this world is too complicated. Chapter 646 Basic Visualization Method. System. I want to draw a lottery. Time flies, and unknowingly, a month has passed. However, this is not a problem for Liang Yue, who has a full year of intermission after reaching level 5 authority. The real problem is that after entering the height of summer, the school also entered the final exam phase, which marks the end of his high school career. If you think about it carefully, Liang Yue now seems to be just a young man who has just turned 18 in reality, but compared with those around him who are busy concentrating on sprinting and preparing to apply for university, his mentality at this time can be described as stable as an old dog, and his daily class life is also exceptionally boring and tedious because this guy has no plans to go to college at all. It's too much of a waste of time, whether it is for daily cultivation, or if he wants to retreat for a while on a whim. It is very inconvenient. Liang Yue used to be single-mindedly thinking about going to college. After all, that is a stage in life, just like joining the army. Missing it is a lifelong regret, but times have changed after experiencing so many people and things. His current thoughts have changed, and his former life goals have become insignificant in the face of today's reality. Grasping the most important thing in front of you is what you should do now. Soon, as Liang Yue's voice fell, a familiar lottery turntable began to appear in front of him as usual. After subconsciously raising his eyes to look at the prizes distributed throughout the turntable, he casually said, "Start stop." Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a copy of Basic Visualization Method in this routine lottery. This technique comes from a certain intermediate Xiangsha world and is a compulsory method for elite disciples of Taoist sex practitioners. Can visualize nature, myths and legends, or imaginary things through certain specific methods, so as to condense their spirit and concretize and shape their mental power after advancing to a certain level. It can improve the practitioner's control over his own mental power, solidity, resistance to mental attacks, etc., and can also be developed and utilized through various means. Yo, visualization method. Good stuff. It's a pity that it came a little late after the lottery results came out. Liang Yue's eyes lit up immediately, and he couldn't wait to read it carefully. But considering the classroom environment at this time, he had to give up. Unlike this guy's mediocrity and lack of desire, the exchange students in his class from all over the United States and around the world are extremely concerned about going to college. After all, this is America. Lighthouse, glory, civilization, ideals. Various slogans and personas are still shining brightly and have not faded. The quality of higher education here can be said to be the best in the world. Although tuition is a big problem, it still can't stop the enthusiasm and expectations of students as long as there is a bit of ambition. Regardless of academic performance, who doesn't want to go to college, at least? Most of the students in Liang Yue's class have this idea. As a result, approaching the exam season, the international class has naturally entered a high-pressure learning atmosphere. Looking around, there are sounds of reading everywhere. The little friends are teaming up to lie on the table, doing questions, and then going to self-study in their spare time. And there are also figures in the library. However, this kind of thing has no impact on Liang Yue. After all, he has seen it a lot in China. It is Peter, Sam, Gwen, and Nazi beside him who are very concerned and single-mindedly want to enter the ivory tower. Even Michaela, who just joined not long ago, also has a bit of a temporary embrace of Buddha's feet. Ring ring ring. In the afternoon, after lunch, everyone gathered as usual under the shade of a big tree on campus, reading books and doing questions. Liang Yue, as the top student in the class, also often acts as a tutor to explain the difficult problems in the books to Sam and others. At this moment, a sudden mobile phone ringtone suddenly rang. Liang Yue subconsciously rummaged through his pocket, pretending to take out his mobile phone and take a look. The caller was Tony Stark. He goes to his house almost every day, and now he still has to make a phone call. Hello, what's the matter, Stark? I heard you're graduating soon, kid. Well, unknowingly, I've been in the United States for almost 2 years. Yes, time does indeed fly by. How is it? Have you thought about which school you want to apply to? I don't want to go to college. It's too much of a waste of time. Huh? How could you have this idea? This is my well-considered conclusion. Not going to college. That will make your life incomplete, kid. Really, I'm talking to you now as someone who's been there. Think about those precious friendships around you, the ivory tower filled with a liquid of knowledge, and those fresh and delicious girls. Because of your decision, bang. All gone. Cough. In short, I'm saying, I think you should go to college to experience life. If you have something to say, say it. If you don't, I'll hang up. Tisk. The thing is, with a gradual exposure of gene therapy technology, many people now know that this thing came from your hands, including some senior professors in universities, and some of their affiliated research institutions. Some people have found out that you are now at the age of graduation. They want to ask me which university you want to go to. To be honest, as long as you speak now, any university will not hesitate to admit you, and it's without examination. But the price is that they need to participate in the research of gene technology, at least provide them with some necessary theoretical support. With my current net worth, taking out a little bit to donate should not be rejected by any university. But the problem is, I don't want to go to school anymore. You should know that with my current ability, finding a quiet place to cultivate is the most correct choice. Okay, you're right. But many people are jealous of the technology in your hands, and now many people are secretly paying attention to your home. Then let them come. I will make them regret coming into this world in my own way. Don't be impulsive, kid. Things haven't reached that point yet. I think they will at most find trouble with you from the perspective of law and company operation, just like my Iron Man armor back then. It's different, Stark. You refused to share at the beginning, but I have already shared it now. A few days ago, the agent from the UK just flew back home with more than 20 gene therapy pods. The military and Antliu's sanatorium have also taken away a batch of positions in advance. You only sent out a set of Iron Man armor at the beginning, and now those people want to find trouble with me. They just want more. So the best solution is to shut them up forever. Okay, the principle is correct, but now it's a society ruled by law. Yes, a society ruled by law. Some people can modify laws, customize amendments, and even manipulate public opinion to do whatever they want. I can actually use some means as long as I don't leave any evidence in the process. No one can do anything to me. You're right, right. This matter, let's talk to SHIELD and the military first. After all, they have benefited from you, and they have an obligation to solve some troubles for you. I don't have time to contact them. I'll do it. Chapter 647, The Complicated Graduation Season. What's wrong? Sounds like someone's trying to make trouble for you. After hanging up the phone, Sam and the others immediately looked at him, asking with concern. Their expressions even held a hint of eagerness. It's nothing, just a few lowlifes trying to open their mouths for some benefits. Dealing with those kinds of people is my specialty. Seeing this, Liang Yue waved his hand dismissively and laughed. If he guessed correctly, those who still wanted to make a move against him, knowing that he had already reached cooperation with the U.S. military and S.H.I.E.L.D., and had opened up the use of gene repair services to certain classes, were nothing more than people from a few different angles. These could roughly be divided into those with direct vested interests and those coveting the benefits. The first group mainly included some biological and medical companies, as well as related technology research institutions and groups. The medical technology that Liang Yue had now brought out was summarized by the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu. Through decades of high-speed deduction and thousands of years of standardization and integration, far exceeding the actual level of human society, it is no exaggeration to say that it represents the future development direction in this field. Therefore, once Liang Yue's gene therapy technology came out, it was basically equivalent to blocking all paths for this type of industry and research group, because all research and technology directions related to biological genes, Western medicine, and recuperation on this path will eventually be included in it. To put it simply, Liang Yue took someone else's path, and now others have no path to take, with interests blocked and no way to advance. This situation would naturally arouse hostility from relevant people. Fortunately, the gene therapy technology has not yet been mass-produced, and a series of related companies, individual investors, etc., still have time to adjust their businesses. However, a large amount of profit will still be inevitably lost afterward. After all, the medical and pharmaceutical sector was originally an important pillar industry in the United States, and it was a very high-threshold one in the original world industrial pattern. This was a major advantage that the United States had over other countries in order to maintain this sufficiently high-end and profitable advantage. Its ruling class even did not hesitate to move many relatively backward and less economically efficient industrial production industries out of the country. They did not hesitate to promote the layoffs of many blue-collar workers through policies, and even joined forces with the insurance and education industries, almost marginalizing the upward channels for the lower classes. In short, the biological and medical industry is a pillar industry in the United States, with great importance and wide-ranging implications. Liang Yue's biotechnology has indeed blocked the interests of many people and many forces. To analyze it roughly, his current behavior seems to be even more serious than the previous Stark Iron Man armor incident, because Stark's armor mostly involved the interests of the military and a part of the arms dealers, belonging to a game within a certain class. The introduction of gene therapy technology, on the other hand, affects the entire industrial layout of the United States, people's livelihood plans, and even the long-term stability of the financial bubble. Therefore, the reality leaves Liang Yue with few choices. In summary, Liang Yue now probably only has two paths to take: either cooperate and share, or get out quickly, even if he can still use some extraordinary means to put himself in a position of transcendence, ensuring his own interests and safety within a small range. But in the overall environment, he will still become an unwelcome target. Clearly, he is the one benefiting mankind, but in the end, he is still defined as the bad guy. Therefore, Liang Yue's final choice is to get out just some unenterprising pharmaceutical groups. If they are really rectified, it would at most be considered an industrial adjustment, and as long as Liang Yue is willing to go back, he represents the most advanced productivity in the industry. He can still leapfrog the domestic biological pharmaceutical treatment industry, which is not too outstanding, to the international advanced level, which is worth supporting and attracting. Not to mention, in addition to gene therapy and other biological-related technologies, Liang Yue also has other heavyweight bargaining chips on him. As for those who, on the surface, do not seem to have much conflict with him, but secretly still want to attack him, the benefit-coveting parties, these people are mostly rats in the dark. And there will always be no shortage of them in any era, especially when facing this kind of super new technology that can heal the dead and grow flesh from bones at the genetic level, allowing people to regenerate severed limbs, regain lost teeth, and even greatly extend human lifespan to a certain extent, and has biological hibernation, which can allow people to travel through time. Whether ordinary people, politicians, capitalists, or supervillains, they can't help but have this idea. The only difference is that some people can only think about it in their hearts, while others can put their ideas into action. Unfortunately, for Liang Yue, these people can only be considered a group of flies at most. Even the famous villainous organization Hydra, which has been lurking in the shadows, has not been able to make him take a second look. Soon, with the arrival of graduation season, the atmosphere in the school also began to become a little anxious. Those who have ideas to continue their studies in further education are now mostly crazy busy, reviewing, doing questions, soaking in the library, and sending emails to various universities to submit applications. Those with better conditions mobilize their connections, contact various enrollment units in advance, build relationships, go through the back door, and obtain various sports and art student certificates. For example, in Liang Yue's school football team, one of the big black guys was pre-approved for admission to a famous university campus because of his excellent physical condition and outstanding performance in the college league. The same situation also exists in various project fields, such as baseball, gymnastics, swimming, and track and field. As Liang Yue said before, if he wanted to, even if he didn't take the exam, didn't bring technology, or join the disciples of certain professors, he could still easily enter various ivory tower campuses. As long as he throws down tens of millions of dollars, someone will naturally help solve all the procedures. There are countless such examples, both in and out of the show, at home and abroad. In short, compared to the various competitions in China, bonus events unknown to ordinary people, and direct interview admissions, the admission methods in the United States are also diverse and blooming. Of course, in addition to these students who are willing to continue their studies in further education, there are also a larger number of people on campus at this time who do not have that kind of idea. After graduating from high school, they will directly enter the busy society, find a job, become an apprentice, submit resumes, form a band, run nightclubs, pursue dreams of acting and singing, or return to their hometown to run a family workshop, etc. This situation is actually very common abroad, and only a few can get into college the remaining high school year. End period is their only happy time left. Once they graduate, it means the end of their youth. Therefore, during this period, Liang Yue's classmates at school are almost visibly divided into two groups. One is desperately studying, running relationships, and nervous to death, and the other is desperately playing, indulging, and having all kinds of parties. Of course, there are also some unconventional speculators, and I don't know if they can be considered mavericks in this group anyway. Liang Yue has received a lot of letters and emails asking for adoption and shelter recently. Among them are American beauties, black pearls from unknown countries, exotic women from Arab regions, cute Ukrainian girls with big eyes, Russian girls with exaggerated body proportions, and international students from China. Whether they know him or not, they are all his classmates in school on weekdays. Some simply want to find a meal ticket, while others have put forward some conditions to him, such as helping to obtain citizenship here, etc. Liang Yue was also very tempted. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 648 The Golden Elixir is complete. After returning home, as expected, Peter, Gwen, and a few other young companions quickly got into the swing of things and successively applied to him remotely to enter the Stronghold world. However, due to the recent academic pressure and the pressure of being promoted to higher institutions, even when they are in the Stronghold world, most of Liang Yue's small group's energy is still focused on reviewing and studying for exams. The time exchange ratio of 1 to 10 is basically equivalent to cheating comparatively. Going to dungeons, grinding monsters, getting equipment, and leveling up have become incidental events, done perfunctorily. It's really neglecting their studies side, or put it bluntly. This innate imagery is a product of the cultivator's spiritual power. Merging and communicating with nature from the very beginning of its formation, it can guide the power of heaven and earth, and use the power of nature to form some kind of supernatural technique. It is conceivable that this visualization method and innate imagery will eventually converge to the same goal and eventually become a similar superior method of using spiritual power. It goes without saying that it will improve the cultivator's spiritual strength, flexibility, quality, power, resistance, and other basic functions, and under fortuitous circumstances, it may even awaken some other mysterious techniques. The difference between the two is probably that the steps in the cultivation process are different, and the methods used will also present completely different differences. The advantages and disadvantages vary, each with its own strengths. The former has lofty aspirations, and is better at solidifying spiritual power. The latter takes one step at a time, in harmony with heaven and earth in general. Liang Yue is still more optimistic about his own innate imagery cultivation method, and his current cultivation and realm methods have already become one with his own innate imagery, inseparable. However, It is worth mentioning that the threshold for cultivating innate imagery is relatively high in general. It can only be cultivated after reaching the innate realm, of course. It is not ruled out that some geniuses may appear, who can comprehend similar imagery methods in the acquired realm by observing the phenomena of heaven and earth, thereby using it to advance to the innate realm. For example, sword light is one such example, but for most cultivators, this is almost an iron law, and not all innate experts can successfully cultivate the innate imagery. In contrast, this newly acquired basic visualization method does not have too many thresholds. As long as one enters the door of cultivation, one can try to make contact with it after slightly entering the acquired realm. Even some ordinary people who have never stepped into the world of cultivation can use it to condense their own spiritual power, thereby achieving a state of spiritual perfection, inner beauty and wisdom. For example, some old monks in temples, old Taoists, Confucian scholars who focus on reading, etc. So, this lottery has once again sent me a useless cultivation method. Tisket is more suitable for those disciples who have just joined the sect to practice this thing. Thinking of this, Liang Yue rolled his eyes helplessly. He gently tossed the cultivation method in his hand, and sent it to senior sister Siko and the others through the connection between the villagers at this time. The Flowing Cloud sect in the Water Margin Hero world had just been established not long ago, and the disciples under its banner were mostly young teenagers of 7 or 8 years old. They had just heard of cultivation, and it was just right to use it to condense their own spiritual power. However, the system also said when the lottery ended that this basic visualization method was something that even elite disciples in Taoist sects could learn. Now that it is placed in his own sect's inheritance, of course a certain cultivation threshold must be set according to Liang Yue's vision. This must be something that only disciples above the inner sect level can learn. In fact, what is taught on their sect has always been the real deal, and there are absolutely none of those flashy, good-looking but impractical appearances in real world martial arts halls and sect inheritances. Although the cultivation inheritance is different between disciples at each stage, at most there is only a difference between advanced and basic. As long as one is willing to work hard and cultivate diligently, anyone can continue to improve. Temporarily putting the visualization method aside, Liang Yue subconsciously scanned his dancer with his divine sense. Just as he was about to start meditating for a while, Liang Yue was immediately shocked by the situation in his body. Then, he quickly turned to his sleeves and took out another cultivation method, which was the returning origin manual that he had obtained from the mission lottery after returning from the DC world. This is a very complete golden core stage inheritance cultivation method. The content includes a part of the skills, principles, and precautions for condensing the golden core during the foundation establishment stage, as well as the key points and overall context from the early stage of the golden core to the peak of the golden core's great perfection. The names, divisions, and manifestations of each small realm are naturally recorded in the book. Even some preparations, taboos, and precautions before breaking through the nascent soul stage are all included for Liang Yue. This returning origin manual is definitely a very precious cultivation classic, which can save him many unnecessary detours in the cultivation process. Although Liang Yue does not take it as his main cultivation method, and does not completely believe in the content of the book, only regarding this returning origin manual as a reference for auxiliary cultivation and realm comparison. But in this process, it has indeed provided him with many conveniences according to the records in this returning origin manual. The manifestation of the golden core stage's great completion should be that it contains divine spirit, is as clear as glass, has Dao patterns on the surface, and is surrounded by floating light and runes from time to time. In addition, the manifestation of the golden core's great completion is also related to the cultivator's own spiritual power attribute. For example, Liang Yue's main cultivation is wood spiritual power, but because of the thunder fire wood innate imagery, his spiritual power, in addition to the wood attribute, also has the power of thunder and fire. Therefore, the manifestation of his golden core's great completion should be a purple, rime glazed golden core that is basically consistent with the color of his spiritual power, with natural purple gold red mysterious Dao patterns on the surface, and an outer cover of thunder, fire, and wood three-lineage spiritual rime brilliance and heaven and earth runes, just like the golden core in Liang Yue's body is manifesting at this moment. That is to say, Liang Yue has already reached the realm of golden core stage's great completion without even feeling anything. But the problem is, it's only been a little over a month since I came back from the DC world. Counting the time ratio bonus of the stronghold world, it's only about half a year at most, plus the 3 to 5 years left after the golden core formation in the DC world. Is this already the golden core's great completion? Thinking of this, Liang Yue felt uneasy. So he immersed his mind again. He invested all of his vast divine sense into his body, surrounding his entire cultivation system, Danshan, thunder, firewood, small tree and golden core, and began to scan it bit by bit. After a long while, Liang Yue, who did not find anything wrong, raised his head again suspiciously, frowned, and thought with some confusion. Finally, with no other choice, he could only silently summon the villager communication platform and contact his mother again. Chapter 649, The Planet Concept. Mom, I seem to have encountered some problems in my cultivation. As soon as the message was sent, a spatial passage appeared in front of Liang Yue in just a few seconds. The other side of the passage was the cliff top of the mountain where he had last met his mother. Now, under the torrent of time, thousands of years have quietly passed. The peach tree growing on the side of the mountain rock appears even more gnarled, covered with ravines, its branches and leaves emerald green, full of vibrant vitality. Peach fruits, each the size of a bowl, hang on the branches, crystal clear and jade-like, with a delicate and enchanting appearance that makes people want to take a bite. Beneath the verdant branches, a fairy-like mother is sitting cross-legged beside a stone table, wearing a high-collared, wide-sleeved ancient costume. I don't know when, but she has changed into an ancient costume after not seeing her for so long. The person is still the same, but her temperament seems even more ethereal. Stepping into it, Liang Yue frowned slightly at this time, and walked to the opposite side of the stone table in a few strides. What's wrong? Mom picked up the teacup at this time and poured him a cup of tea, asking calmly, I just feel that my cultivation has been increasing too fast. It's only been a few days. In the blink of an eye, I've already reached the great perfection of the golden core stage. What do you think? As he spoke, Liang Yue moved his body back on his own, then stretched out his arms and asked him, let me see. The golden core is solid, with a divine spirit inside, and the Dao patterns are complete. It is indeed a sign of the great perfection of the golden core stage. It's normal. After Mom glanced at his Danshan, she picked up the tea in front of her, took a sip, and said with a calm and indifferent look, is this still normal? Over here it's only been a little over a month since I returned last time. After entering the golden core stage, I've only cultivated for 3 or 4 years in total. Most of the time in between, I didn't even have time to put in much effort. Yet, I've already reached the great perfection of the golden core stage. Don't you think it's a bit strange? Its level is high and its effect is extraordinary. Even if you have just started, it can greatly increase a person's cultivation. As she spoke, Mom paused and put the tea in her hand back on the stone table. Seeing this, Liang Yue quickly picked up the small kettle next to him and refilled it for her, looking eager to learn. You are only at the golden core stage now. In the vast universe, you can only be regarded as just entering the world of cultivation. With the blessing of the great art of cosmic fortune transformation, you can naturally obtain many benefits that ordinary people cannot imagine. Regarding this point, what do you think? I just feel that since I constructed that key-absorbing lotus, at least before leaving the realm of mortals and becoming an immortal master, I probably don't need to worry about cultivation resources anymore. Liang Yue replied without thinking. When he heard this, that great art of cosmic fortune transformation can indeed break through the void in the area around you, and then draw energy and matter from different spaces, smooth it out and classify it, and then absorb it into your body. Its levels are rich and its categories are complex. It can greatly improve your spiritual power level. However, in this case, the speed of your own cultivation also has a certain element of luck. What do you mean? It depends on the location of your cultivation place, or rather, the spatial coordinates. When you run the great art of cosmic fortune transformation, the spatial world broken through by the key-absorbing lotus with you as the origin is not constant. If your luck is bad, you may be connected to several worlds that are in the age of Dharma decline. The resources there are scarce, and the energy level is extremely low. Cultivating at this time is of little benefit, but if your luck is good, and you find a few places mixed with high-level energy, you will see the situation you are in now. This doesn't mean that my future cultivation will still have to bear some risks. What if I connect to some strange places? The great art of cosmic fortune transformation is not that simple. You can comprehend it yourself later if you can continue to improve it. Compared to these, I am very curious about what you plan to do next. As she spoke, Mom suddenly changed the subject, and looked at him with a pair of big eyes that seemed to be able to talk. What to do next? Mom, are you talking about advancing to the nascent soul stage? Regarding this, I probably already have 2 ideas. Well, speaking of which, after reaching the great perfection of the golden core stage, the next realm doesn't necessarily have to be shattering the core to form the soul, right? Indeed, Shattering the core to form the soul is just a relatively safe path to advancement in the myriad worlds, but it is not the only one. It depends on your own choice. That's good. As for my future cultivation, I have actually made a lot of predictions. As he spoke, Liang Yue began to combine some of his previous inspirations and small ideas, and explained his plans to his mother opposite him, adhering to the principle that what suits you best is the best. Liang Yue has never stopped planning and thinking about his own cultivation path since he started on the path of creating his own techniques, whether it is some occasional sparks of inspiration that emerge from his heart, or the essence extracted from some fantasy novels in his previous life, or some signs that he observed in his own cultivation process. All in all, as long as there are perspectives and ideas that are beneficial to his future cultivation and technique creation, this guy will secretly record them in his little notebook. After a period of picking and choosing, summarizing, Liang Yue's ideas about the realm of shattering the core to form the soul are only two. The first is a scene he observed when he passed through the heavenly tribulation and successfully condensed the golden core. The dry golden core was covered with ravines and was on the verge of collapse. In the depths of the ravines, there were patches of magma emitting terrifying heat, roasting the entire golden core from the inside. The pond water, containing a massive amount of vitality, was being transformed into a large amount of rain under Liang Yue's control, scattering from the sky like a torrential downpour. In addition, on the outside of the golden core, there were turbulent tribulation clouds surging, constantly stimulating lightning and thunder, constantly striking down with the rain. This was originally a scene in his Danshan when the golden core was completely condensed and quickly stabilized, but when Liang Yue observed this at the time, he inexplicably associated it with Earth. According to his idea, the Earth must have gone through such a period before it was completely formed and gave birth to life, verifying each other. As long as he regards the wood attribute golden core in his Danshan as the main body of the Earth, the fire attribute power is internalized as the Earth's core magma. The water vapor energy in the Danshan pond is regarded as the atmosphere, and after colliding with each other to form raindrops, it can form rivers, lakes and seas, nourishing the golden core sphere. The heavenly tribulation thunder clouds that he had foolishly absorbed into his body can be regarded as a catalyst for the birth of life. As long as such a layout is in place, a planet existing within his Danshan will be born, although, for a considerable period of time, it may only be a fake. But as long as he follows the template of the planet and digs deeper step by step, as time goes by, miracles will always be born. After all, his golden core is mainly composed of wood attribute spiritual power, full of vitality and with its own spiritual rhyme. Next to it, there is also the pond energy that is richer in vitality to assist, constantly nourishing the golden core sphere. Under such conditions, it seems to be more reliable and more suitable for the birth of life than the pure oil ball plus H2O combination of the real Earth. In addition, the magma inside the planet and the lightning outside also have their own attributes. In Liang Yue's opinion, as long as he follows this path, sooner or later, some kind of magical power belonging to him will naturally be born. Chapter 650, The Seed Root. As for my second idea, it actually follows the same vein as the method centered around the thunder firewood sapling. My current golden core can be seen as the essence of this sapling's heartwood. Besides that, it can also be regarded as a seed that has just shed its old shell and tree body, condensing the most refined part of it, and the sapling that will grow out when it hatches. It will definitely be even better than it is now, but I still have some doubts about this idea. As he spoke, Liang Yue subconsciously picked up the spiritual tea in front of him and took a sip, with a worried look on his face. What doubts? Mother asked calmly upon hearing this regarding the transformation method under this idea. I have two plans. The first is to follow the previous strategy and break out directly when advancing to the nascent soul stage, grow a complete tree body, and then nurture a more powerful essence seed. Then, at the next realm, continue to take root and sprout, grow strong, and then condense the next stage of seeds, repeating this cycle, alternating reincarnation, constantly improving and sublimating, and progressing step by step. It will definitely become more and more miraculous and extraordinary. The other transformation method is to keep the current golden core seed, constantly absorbing my own spiritual charm and Dao fruit, plus the protection of fortune manipulation to increase the potential of this seed, and when the time is right, the merits are complete, and there is no way to advance, then break out of the shell. By then the sapling that grows out of this Dao fruit will definitely be unspeakably wonderful. These two plans, and two ideas. Mom, what do you think I should choose? After emptying out the things in his heart, Liang Yue's mood couldn't help but calm down at this time, and then he looked at his mother opposite him with a face full of anticipation, waiting for her to give an answer. Using bronze as a mirror, one can straighten one's clothes. Using the past as a mirror, one can know the rise and fall. Your ideas are all good, but in the end, you still have to rely on yourself to make a choice. After saying that, Mother didn't care what he thought, and waved her hand in a trance. Liang Yue had already returned to the bar in front of the dungeon gate. For a moment, looking around, someone suddenly felt lost. Alice, in the end, I still have to bear everything alone. Coming to the back of the bar, he took out a bottle of fruit wine from the wine cabinet and poured it into a glass, subconsciously shaking it. When the aroma of the wine was strong, he sat down on the side with a glass. However, regarding the issue of cultivation realm, Mom has already given an answer. It's good if there are no problems. Now I can rest assured. Next, after checking for gaps and filling them, I will start preparing for the tribulation. However, the momentum of a cultivator's tribulation is still too great. The current Earth is full of crises everywhere, and it is not easy to find a quiet place. Why not go to the universe to take a look? As soon as this thought arose, Liang Yue's eyes suddenly lit up, and his mind began to wonder. Speaking of which, the Power Stone should still be stored on more agate this time, right? I don't know if the Guardians of the Galaxy's plot has started. It's a pity that there is no star map, and I can only wander around aimlessly in the universe. Fortunately, after the last upgrade, the Stronghold world has opened a new function. Otherwise it would be difficult to handle if I got lost in the vast sea of stars. The new ability that appeared after the Stronghold world was upgraded is called Transfer Transmission. As the name suggests, it means that the Stronghold world can be regarded as a portable transfer station, which can perform fixed-point transfer between two space points. For example, Liang Yue is currently in his own manor in northern New York City, leaving a coordinate point when he takes a spaceship to Beeping, and re-enters the Stronghold world. He can use the previous coordinate point as a marker, and use the Stronghold world as a transfer station to teleport back to the manor. This method also works in the universe, compared with a mage's circle opening. The advantage of this teleportation mode is that he does not need to consume any magic power, and the operation is relatively simple. It is very convenient for weak chickens, people with a poor sense of direction, and those who cannot understand spatial positioning to use well. Liang Yue is certainly not among them, but that does not prevent him from occasionally taking a shortcut, especially when the heart of magic in his eyebrows was previously lent to Gu Yi, and the other party has not yet returned it. He only has that little bit of magic power in his body from the professional system. Naturally, he should save as much as he can, however, before officially embarking on a space trip. I should indeed prepare well. Putting the glass in his hand on the table, Liang Yue then began to count on his fingers in terms of weapon refining materials. There are quite a few stored in the Amino Iwado space, most of which are drops from dungeons. There should be many good things. Iridium ore can also be bought back in another wave. In addition, I have to introduce some rare metals from Stark. At least everything on the periodic table must be obtained. By the way, there is also vibranium. Wakanda, where Black Panther is located, is too closed, and it is not easy to deal with for the time being, but it seems that some are also sold in certain black markets. Regarding this, you can also ask Stark about it then. Before I leave, some industrial technology investments should also start to be laid out domestically. Genetic therapy technology is still too eye-catching. The military and S.H.I.E.L.D. don't have to worry about protecting themselves, and Aunt Liu should be fine, but some people who are related to me, for example, Peter, Sam, they might be targeted by some people. It seems that before I leave, I have to strengthen them again. That's it. After making up his mind, Liang Yue immediately stood up, and with a thought, he appeared on the ground in the next moment. At this time, Sam, Gwen and others were sitting around on a patch of lush grass, with their backs against a dark oak tree with towering branches. The fountain on the side was tinkling with endless water waves. Butterflies and hummingbirds are flying together in the flowers, and several squirrels are quietly feasting on the intertwined grapevines. Coming to the front of the few people, he told them about his travel plans, which immediately aroused envy. Space travel? Are you serious? Oh, I really envy you, buddy. I suddenly feel that my life seems to be dull. That is to say, we probably won't see you for a long time, right? That won't happen. As long as the spatial coordinates are established, I can come back at any time I want to go with you too. Aren't you still busy with college entrance exams? Persevere, guys. I'm just going to scout the way first this time. When I get the star map, I'll take you out to play when I have time, okay? Don't forget to bring me a gift when you come back, of course. In addition, in order to ensure your safety before I leave, I have to transfer something extra to you. As he spoke, Liang Yue stretched out his right index finger and quickly tapped the center of each of the 5 people's eyebrows. In the next moment, a stream of strange information was transmitted into their minds. In this way, perhaps, it was because they were receiving knowledge in this way for the first time, which made everyone a little uncomfortable, or perhaps it was because of the information stream. In short, when Gwen, Nazy and others woke up one after another. More than 3 hours had passed. The first to regain consciousness were naturally Gwen and Peter after becoming Spider-Man. These two not only had their physical fitness strengthened, but even their mental strength was strengthened to a certain extent. In addition, after becoming a dark professional, the body attributes were datafied, and the same was increased to a certain extent. Unfortunately, because they were only initially transferred and had not had time to grow, this strengthening was also very limited. Not to mention the others, they have only just embarked on this path of evolution, and everything is still very early. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.